Chapter 89. It was a middle-aged man that Mu Yu did not recognize. With the help of the shadow clone sword, he could barely make out his appearance. Looking at his attire, he seemed to be a cultivator. If Mu Yu did not remember wrongly, he should be a disciple of the space-seizing faction. Last time, during the competition at Qingsong School, he fought against a disciple of the space-seizing faction. This person's death was very miserable. His neck was dripping with blood. Upon closer inspection, one could see deep claw marks. His chest was badly mutilated with a hole. His heart was gone. His death was the same as Xiao Hu and Tu Panshan's. Mu Yu covered his nose. When he wanted to take a closer look, several rats suddenly drilled out of the man's heart and fled in all directions. One of them even rushed past Mu Yu's feet. Even though Mu Yu was a cultivator, he was still very worried when he encountered this kind of thing. Seeing corpses and rats in the eerie sewers was not a happy thing. Mu Yu forced himself to calm down. He touched his head. Just now, he subconsciously wanted to fly up and hit his head. Even now, it was still aching. This person had been dead for at least a month. Some parts of his body had already started to rot. His stomach was flat. His internal organs had probably been eaten clean by the rat. His eyes were wide open and looked like they were about to pop out of their socket. At least he died outside and had someone to collect his body. You only have the company of rats here. How pitiful. Mu Yu mourned for a few moments and then continued to walk forward. After walking along the sewers for a while, there would be light shining down. Above him was the entrance to the sewers. He turned into a passageway and then he saw another corpse. This time, he was much calmer. He recognized this corpse. It was the one he saw the night before. It was the one who scolded the Grey Disciple and then disappeared. The same way of death. The same way of death. Mu Yu could already confirm his guess. He estimated that if he walked a few more steps and turned a few more passages, he would be able to find Fong Cheng's corpse. Mu Yu felt a chill run down his spine. There were so many cultivator corpses lying in the ground of this huge academy. These corpses were rotting and becoming food for the rats, but no one noticed. It was really sad. Every day, people came and went in the academy, and there were always people who went missing. Presumably, the fellow disciples of these cultivators would never have dreamed that their missing brothers and sisters would be hiding under the academy. The bottom of the academy seemed to have become a living hell. He walked along the passageway, and within 2 hours, he had already found more than 10 corpses. The degree of decomposition of each corpse was different. He wasn't familiar with the layout of the academy and didn't know which courtyard he was in. He also didn't know which sect these corpses belonged to. These tunnels were newly dug, and there was still soil on the ground. Most of the soil seemed to have been transported out, leaving only a little bit of soil residue. Such a huge project was used to store the corpses. The murderer probably did not want the corpses to pile up in the sewer and cause a blockage. But who was the murderer? Why would they use such a cruel method? Where did their hearts go? Could it be that the demon clan was really the culprit? Did the demon clan kill people at will or with a purpose? That's not right. If I continue to walk like this, I will only see corpses and nothing else. Mu Yu suddenly thought, how did the Black Shadow know that the Grey Disciples were being humiliated? Unless he was nearby at the time, or the Grey Disciples told him. If he wanted to find the murderer, he should be in the Grey Disciples' courtyard. In other words, maybe one of the Grey Disciples was the murderer. But was this possible? If the Grey Disciples had this kind of ability to kill people, would they still need to hide? He should have shown his ability long ago and joined some sect. He didn't need to be a servant who was ordered around all day. Could it be that he had something to hide? In any case, he had to start investigating from the Grey Disciples' courtyard. When he wanted to go back, Mu Yu was dumbfounded. This place was connected in all directions, and he didn't know which way to go back. There were actually a lot of courtyards in the academy. They were not only specially prepared for sex, but also for rogue cultivators to rest in. Those courtyards cost spirit stones. Moreover, the Grey Disciples' courtyard was divided into more than a dozen small courtyards. There were also drainage openings on the road. There were at least 100 drainage openings in the entire academy. The academy was so big. Muyu had to turn here and there. How could he know where he turned to? Looks like I can only look one by one. Muyu sighed. Fortunately, he was prepared and brought some root grass down. He walked a few steps to the left and found an exit. He walked over and quietly poked the root grass out to observe the surrounding situation. This was an unfamiliar courtyard. There were a few cultivators chatting in the courtyard. Muyu vaguely heard them talking about the Green Pine Alliance and the Jihua Alliance. The establishment of the Green Pine Alliance and the Jihua Alliance had caused the entire cultivation world to pay attention to them. Muyu heard two of the disciples seem to be arguing about something. After listening carefully, it turned out that they were thinking about whether to join the Green Pine Alliance or the Jihua Alliance. However, Muyu had already confirmed from their words that this courtyard belonged to the secluded peace sect. Muyu knew about the secluded peace sect's courtyard. It was 3 courtyards away from the Qingsong School's courtyard. And because the Qingsong School's position was more honorable, the Grey Disciples had to listen to orders all day long. Therefore, the courtyard of the Qingsong School was right next to the Grey Disciples' courtyard. Muyu followed the route in his memory and finally found the sewers under the Qingsong School. However, when he turned into the sewers, he was shocked. He found 7 or 8 corpses in the sewers under the Qingsong School's courtyard. There was no doubt that these people were the Qingsong School's disciples. 7 or 8 disciples of the Qingsong School had secretly died, and the rest of the people in the Qingsong School were unaware. Presumably, they were busy preparing for the Qingsong Taoist celebration, so these people's disappearance seemed insignificant. This is strange. Why didn't the bodies of Little Tiger and the Jihua School's disciples be moved down when they killed them? Muyu was puzzled. It was understandable that the murderer couldn't move Little Tiger's body in time because of his intervention. However, why didn't the 4 disciples of the Jihua School hide their bodies? When Muyu saw the corpses of the Qingsong School's disciples, he couldn't feel sad. He thought, it's a pity that you're not like Little Tiger. Otherwise, your disappearance would have attracted attention. More or less, these people died because they bullied the Grey Disciples. Among all the sects, the Qingsong School's attitude toward the Grey Disciples was the worst. They were born with an inexplicable sense of superiority and felt that they were superior to others. In fact, compared to other sects, they did have an advantage in terms of talent. If the disciples of the Qingsong School didn't ruthlessly order the Grey Disciples around, they wouldn't be able to set off their noble status. They didn't treat the Grey Disciples as human beings. In the end, they paid the price with their lives and died in a dark place forever. However, the murderer killed them because they bullied the Grey Disciples. It was a bit too much. Muyu turned around the Qingsong School's courtyard and went straight to the Grey Disciples' courtyard. However, at this moment, the sound of heavy breathing suddenly came from the corner. The sound of breathing came so suddenly that Muyu's heart almost skipped a beat. He had goosebumps all over his body. After walking for so long, all he saw in this dark and rancid sewer were dead people. The dead couldn't breathe. The only sound he could hear was the sound of rats and dripping water, as well as his own breathing. However, this sudden voice was clearly audible and somewhat deep, as if something was whispering. This was definitely not a dead person. Was it the mysterious black shadow? Muyu's heart began to beat faster. Was the black shadow a human or a demon? Could it be that he had been living in this dark place all this while? Then what did he rely on to survive? Did he rely on eating human hearts to survive? Then he was definitely not a human. The light of the shadow sword gradually dimmed. Muyu slowly approached the corner, trying not to make any sound. The The sound of breathing came closer and closer. It seemed to be accompanied by some asthma. He thought to himself, does this black shadow have asthma? It's not strange to have asthma after breathing in this damned place for so long. Muyu held his breath. Should he rush over and fight with the black shadow? Wouldn't that be too rash? It would be awkward if he couldn't win. Who cares? I want to see if you're a human or a ghost. Muyu took a step forward. The shadow sword in his hand shone brightly, illuminating the entire tunnel. There was no one. How is this possible? Muyu looked at the entire passage in surprise. The breathing sound just now clearly came from here. Could it be that there was something wrong with her hearing? He felt his way into the tunnel. The sound of heavy breathing had disappeared. The tunnel was still full of claw marks, and it was a little damp. Under the illumination of the green light, Muyu found a shocking pool of blood. The blood hadn't solidified yet, which meant that it was left here not long ago. Muyu squatted down and carefully examined the pool of blood. It was a little black. He reached out and touched it. It was still warm. It looked like the blood of a human. He also saw a set of tattered clothes. It was so dirty that he didn't know how long it had been since it was washed. Just from the clothes, he couldn't tell which sect the cultivator belonged to. The tunnel became quiet again. Muyu could only hear his own breathing. He found that his breathing had become a little heavier. It was similar to the sound of breathing just now. But that's not right. Why was there a slight difference in the sound of his breathing? Different breathing? No, it was clearly two breathing sounds. Muyu felt a little cold on his neck. It was as if there was a light breath blowing on the back of his neck. That breath came so suddenly, as if it had appeared out of thin air. That heavy breathing sound was right behind him. There was someone behind him. Chapter 90. If you were in the dark without any light, and at this time, a heavy breathing sound suddenly appeared behind you out of nowhere, without any premonition, what would you do? Muyu instinctively jumped up again and hit his head again. He still didn't learn his lesson. But this time, he didn't care about the pain. He rolled forward and the shadow clone sword stabbed behind him. Ding! The shadow clone sword seemed to have hit something hard and bounced off. Muyu only saw a shadow flash by and disappear into the sewers. The shadow was so fast that he didn't even have time to react. He took a deep breath and thought that it was really dangerous just now. If the shadow had attacked him, he would have been doomed. But the shadow seemed to want to avoid him and didn't want to meet him, so it chose to run away. He calmed himself down and got up. With a step, he chased after the shadow. The sewers were too dark. He could only vaguely feel that the shadow was moving like a gust of wind. The shadow was extremely fast. After running for a while, it would turn a corner. It didn't stop at all and directly drifted past. It was the first time Muyu had seen such a skillful drifting technique. The sewers weren't suitable for flying, so Muyu could only run. Fortunately, he had learned the mysterious dustfall step. His body was very agile when he turned a corner, so he wasn't left behind by the shadow. But Muyu's dustfall steps was already at its peak, but he still couldn't catch up to the shadow. The shadow's speed wasn't any slower than Muyu's. The shadow seemed to be very familiar with the terrain here. At least, it was much more familiar than Muyu. The shadow made several sharp turns, trying to shake off Muyu's pursuit. From time to time, it would dodge the light from the ground. However, its speed didn't decrease. So much so that Muyu couldn't see what the shadow looked like even after chasing for a long time. If Muyu didn't have the support of the dustfall steps, he would have lost it long ago. "Stop right there!" Muyu shouted. He hoped to call the self-cultivators on the ground to help him block the shadow. Unfortunately, the people on the ground probably wouldn't care about the sewers. In fact, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. The other party's speed was so fast. If he had wanted to launch a sneak attack just now, he would have been injured. The aura of that black shadow was not very stable, it was only at the foundation establishment stage. Even so, Mu Yu was sure that this guy's strength was far beyond those foundation establishment stage cultivators. Just based on this kind of speed, it was rare to find an opponent among the foundation establishment stage cultivators. After chasing for an unknown period of time, Mu Yu realized that the drainage channel was getting shorter and shorter. Some of the protruding rocks almost hit his head. The black shadow nimbly dodged to the side and turned into another passage. This passageway was very long. It wasn't like the previous passageway where one could reach the end after walking for a while. In the long and narrow passage, there was only the sound of Mu Yu's clothes flapping. Just like Mu Yu, the black shadow did not make any sound under his feet. Mu Yu had already locked onto the aura of that black shadow. The light of the shadow clone sword was not enough to illuminate that black shadow, but he would not lose it. That black shadow did not have any intention of slowing down. His physical strength was still very strong. If not for the fact that Mu Yu was often forced by Enshu to run on the mountain roads and train his endurance, he would not have been able to catch up with this guy. One must know that flying was much easier than running. Swish! Mu Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. The bright light shone on his eyes, causing his eyes to be dazzled. Running from a dark place to a bright place was really uncomfortable. He realized that he had unknowingly exited the passage and arrived at a small hill. Mu Yu knew about this small hill. It was near Qing Shou City. He actually left Qing Shou City. That black shadow flashed in the bushes in front of him and disappeared. Mu Yu did not have time to think as he hurriedly followed. In the spacious area, Mu Yu directly stepped on the flying sword. He did not need to run anymore and his speed was much faster. It was currently noon and the sun was shining brightly. Mu Yu finally saw what that black shadow looked like. It was really a demonic beast. This demonic beast looked like a wolf. Its entire body was as black as ink, but it had two red tails that left behind afterimages. Its running speed was very fast. Even if Mu Yu flew, he could not catch up with it immediately. Isn't this a rank 3 demonic beast, soul-devouring wolf? Mu Yu looked at the soul-devouring wolf in shock. When Qingyan brought them out, he would tell them about the characteristics of many demonic beasts. The soul-devouring wolf was one of them. This type of demonic beast was not common. They usually lived in the center of the demonic beast forest. Their strength was extremely tyrannical, comparable to the cultivators of the Jindan period. Ordinary foundation establishment stage cultivators were not their opponent. The soul-devouring wolf was ferocious. It only ate the heart of its prey and drank its blood. It would not touch the other parts of its prey. It was a bit extravagant and wasteful. However, this was in line with the characteristics of the dead cultivators in the school. But the soul-devouring wolf did not have intelligence. Even if it had the cultivation of the Jindan period, it would not be as smart as the humans of the Jindan period. Why would this soul-devouring wolf appear in the school of Qing Shou City? Why would it attack those cultivators? Mu Yu did not think much as he continued to chase after the soul-devouring wolf. Qingyan said that the soul-devouring wolf would kill its prey when it saw it. It was very cruel. However, it clearly had the chance to kill him but did not do so. Why was that? After chasing for 2 hours, the soul-devouring wolf had already rushed into the forest. This forest was the demonic beast forest that Mu Yu had passed through in the past. There were demonic beasts everywhere. The deeper one went, the stronger the demonic beasts were. Ordinary cultivators did not dare to go too deep. Mu Yu was obviously not an ordinary cultivator. Although his cultivation was only at the foundation establishment stage, he had the ability to control wood. The forest was the most advantageous battlefield for him. Once the soul-devouring wolf entered the forest, it would not be able to escape from Mu Yu's palm. Xiao! Mu Yu blended into the trees and arrived at the side of the soul-devouring wolf in a short while. The branches of the trees wrapped around the soul-devouring wolf. However, the soul-devouring wolf reacted quickly. It dodged the branches controlled by Mu Yu and continued to run forward. I really don't believe that you can outrun me in the forest. Mu Yu rolled up the dew grass on the ground and firmly wrapped around the soul-devouring wolf's four limbs. However, the soul-devouring wolf's strength was too great. It was only tripped once before it tore off the dew grass and escaped. The branches in front swept over once again. The soul-devouring wolf leaped high into the air. Its front claws emitted a bright light. All the branches in front of its sharp claws were cut into pieces like tofu. There was no mistake. These cold claws were the sharp claws that Mu Yu saw that night. The moment the soul-devouring wolf attacked, its body was slightly blocked. Mu Yu seized the opportunity and raised his shadow clone sword. A majestic sword energy ruthlessly chopped at the soul-devouring wolf's body, causing it to fall to the ground. Awoo! The soul-devouring wolf cried out in pain. Scarlet blood flowed out of its back. The wound was a ghastly sight. However, its body was still swift. It flipped over and continued to run into the depths of the forest. Mu Yu originally didn't want to hurt this soul-devouring wolf, because the soul-devouring wolf didn't want to kill him in the sewers. However, he had no choice but to make a move. He originally thought that the soul-devouring wolf was a rank 3 monster. Its strength was equivalent to a Jindan period cultivator. It was impossible for it to be hurt by his foundation establishment stage strength. However, this soul-devouring wolf's aura didn't seem like a pure beast's aura. It lacked a wild nature and didn't have the imposing manner of the Jindan period. Other than running away, it didn't even have the thought of fighting with Mu Yu. The soul-devouring wolf's figure suddenly disappeared. A very deep cave appeared in front of him, and it drilled into the cave. Mu Yu stopped in front of the cave. His previous experience taught him that he shouldn't enter carelessly. It was very unsafe without any plans. Furthermore, the soul-devouring wolf was a rank 3 monster. If it attacked, Mu Yu wouldn't have any room to fight back in the cave. He walked to the side of a ponytail pine tree. The branches of the tree moved and extended into the cave. Mu Yu's figure had already disappeared into the trees. The deeper he went into the cave, the more spacious it became. Moreover, there were some strange stones on the walls of the cave that illuminated the entire cave, making it look very bright. The cave quickly became wide and large. There were some grass clippings around it. Then, Mu Yu saw a shadow at the end. What's going on? Did he walk around? What shocked Mu Yu was that this shadow wasn't the soul-devouring wolf that Mu Yu saw. It was a person. How is this possible? Mu Yu remembered that it was the soul-devouring wolf that ran in. He glanced around the cave. There were no other exits. However, the soul-devouring wolf was gone. In its place was a thin and weak human. This human wasn't wearing any clothes. He was lying on his side and curled up. There was a scarlet scar on his back. It was left by Mu Yu's sword chi. Is this a monster? A thought appeared in Mu Yu's mind. Only the monster could transform between a human and a monster. He had already encountered a monster when he was at Mount Fulong, so he was very cautious this time. However, it was impossible for a monster to completely transform into a human. They would more or less leave behind some characteristics of a monster. Mu Yu thought that if he went around, he might be able to see the face of a soul-devouring wolf. The tree branches rolled into the cave and stuck to the wall. Mu Yu crawled out of the tree and stood on a pile of grass clippings. There were some dirty cloth strips around the grass clippings. It looked like they had been torn to shreds by something. There was dried blood and some rocks on the ground. He blocked the shadow clone sword in front of his chest and slowly approached the monster. As long as this person made any strange movements, he would definitely not hesitate to attack. Can you cough? Can you give me a piece of clothing? The monster didn't turn around and spoke very weakly. His voice seemed to be weather-beaten, but it was like a clap of thunder in Mu Yu's ears. Although the monster could speak human language, their voices were different from humans. The guy in front of him didn't have a monster's voice, but a human's. Chapter 91. Deacon Sun. Mu Yu exclaimed. Mu Yu could still vaguely remember Deacon Sun's voice. Back in the academy, it was Deacon Sun who defended Mu Yu in front of Little Tiger. Because of this, Little Tiger held a grudge against Deacon Sun and eventually forced him into the demonic beast forest. With his chi refining stage cultivation, it was impossible for him to survive in the demonic beast forest. This was what Little Tiger had told him. But why was Deacon Sun here? So you know me. Cough cough. Give me a robe. Deacon Sun seemed to be seriously ill as he kept gasping for breath. The gasping sound was exactly the same as what Mu Yu had heard in the sewer. Mu Yu quickly took out a robe from his universe in the sleeve and put it on Deacon Sun. Deacon Sun smiled bitterly and leaned against the wall. He looked at Mu Yu and said, "You look familiar. Which sect are you from?" Mu Yu was extremely shocked. He didn't expect to see Deacon Sun here. At this moment, Deacon Sun's white hair and beard were all bunched up. There were even some blood stains on his face. His face was very haggard, as if he had been ill for a long time. "Deacon Sun, I'm Mu Yu. We've met before in the academy." Mu Yu squatted down and carefully touched Deacon Sun's forehead. Deacon Sun's body was very hot. He seemed to be running a high fever. Deacon Sun smiled miserably, revealing his yellow teeth. "I don't know you. I've seen so many cultivators. How can I remember everyone?" Mu Yu was speechless. He didn't know how to explain. Deacon Sun had seen almost all the disciples of all the sections. It could be said that every disciple would use the spirit testing stone in front of Deacon Sun before stepping into the cultivation world. Deacon Sun would then guide them on where to stand. Mu Yu was one of them. 2 years ago, he had only spoken to Deacon Sun twice before leaving the academy with Feng Haochen. It was normal for Deacon Sun to not remember Mu Yu. "I have some impression of you. You seem to be a disciple of the Falling Dust sect." "The Falling Dust sect has never accepted a disciple from the academy. You seem to be the first one," Deacon Sun said with a frown. Mu Yu nodded with all his might as a sense of guilt welled up in his heart. It was all because of him that Little Tiger bore a grudge against him and almost caused him to lose his life. Fortunately, he managed to survive the calamity and kept his life. If there was anything that could be made up for, Mu Yu would do it without hesitation. "Why are you chasing me? Are you here to kill me?" Deacon Sun asked while gasping for breath. "I thought you were the soul-devouring wolf that killed people." "Wait, are you that wolf?" Mu Yu's eyes widened. How was this possible? How could this person be the soul-devouring wolf? Deacon Sun's eyes flickered with a cold glint. Those people deserved to die. Mu Yu fell silent. He didn't know whether those people deserved to die or not. Perhaps the dead cultivators had their reasons to be hateful. However, he still felt that this was a bit too much. But all of this confused him. How could that soul-devouring wolf be Deacon Sun? Deacon Sun was alone. He was killed by Little Tiger. But why was he here now? "You didn't come to kill me. I didn't sense any killing intent from you." Deacon Sun looked at Mu Yu. Mu Yu nodded. "What's your relationship with that soul-devouring wolf?" This question caused Deacon Sun's eyes to reveal a trace of pain. He said with some resentment, "That bastard from Chingsong School tricked me into coming to this demonic beast forest and attracted a group of demonic beasts. He was the one who caused me to become like this. Cough cough. But I've finally gotten my revenge. That's one thing off my mind." Mu Yu knew that Deacon Sun was referring to Little Tiger. Little Tiger was already dead. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that he would die in the hands of a soul-devouring wolf. Furthermore, this soul-devouring wolf was closely related to Deacon Sun. Mu Yu placed his hand on Deacon Sun's back and transferred his spiritual energy into Deacon Sun's body. Deacon Sun's body was in a terrible condition. All of his bones seemed to be worn out as if they were being squeezed by something. His meridians were also severely damaged. His internal organs were squeezed together. Mu really didn't know how he had been able to hold on until now. Why are you healing me? Since you know me, you should also know that I'm just a gray disciple, right? Deacon Sun's face slowly regained some color. He looked at Mu with some surprise. You might have forgotten, but I was also a gray disciple back then. When I was humiliated by Little Tiger, you were on my side. Therefore, I didn't look down on any gray disciple. Moreover, I also treat you as an elder, Mu said softly. Deacon Sun was slightly stunned. He didn't think that there would be someone who respected him so much. Generally, cultivators from sects wouldn't be so polite to gray disciples. All of the cultivators from sects would speak in a high and mighty tone in front of gray disciples. It's rare for you to be so considerate. You're quite smart. So many people didn't discover the missing people of the academy, but you did. Mu sighed and said, those people were killed by you, right? Can you tell me what your relationship with the soul-devouring wolf is? I'm that soul-devouring wolf. Deacon Sun laughed at himself. Mu had already mentally prepared himself. However, he still found it hard to accept this fact. How could a person be a soul-devouring wolf? Unless the soul-devouring wolf was from the demon clan. However, Deacon Sun didn't seem to be from the demon clan. He didn't have the characteristics of a soul-devouring wolf from head to toe. After I was abandoned in this forest, I was attacked by demon beasts. However, I was lucky enough to survive. A soul-devouring wolf and an indigo lion bull probably fought over me, their food. The soul-devouring wolf won, but it was on the verge of death. It ignored me and hid in this cave. I crawled in, killed the soul-devouring wolf, and then swallowed its demon spirit. Deacon Sun spoke casually. However, Mu could imagine the desperate scene. 2 rank 3 demon beasts fought, and Deacon Sun was only at the chi refinement stage. He could only wait for death. However, there was always a way out. He actually found a chance to survive and swallowed the soul-devouring wolf's demon spirit. The soul-devouring wolf's demon spirit wasn't something I could withstand. Its power was too overbearing. At that time, I felt like my entire body was about to explode. There was a strange fruit in this cave. I didn't know what it was. I only knew that I wanted to quench my thirst, so I ate the fruit. After that, I lost consciousness. Deacon Sun continued, when I woke up, I discovered that I had turned into a wolf. That feeling was too terrifying. I wanted to kill. I wanted to eat something. I lost my mind and rushed out. I don't know how many demon beasts I killed. When I regained my senses, I was here again, and I turned back into a human. Mu was speechless. He had heard from Qingyan that a soul-devouring flower would grow in the soul-devouring wolf's cave. When the soul-devouring flower bore fruit, the soul-devouring wolf would eat the soul-devouring fruit. It would grow a second tail, and its cultivation would skyrocket. Ordinary rank 3 demon beasts were simply no match for it. Deacon Sun had unintentionally devoured the soul-devouring wolf's demon spirit and ate the soul-devouring fruit. This kind of power wasn't something a human could withstand. Perhaps this was the reason for his mutation. However, this mutation was very rare. Mu had never heard of a human being able to turn into a demon beast. Deacon Sun's face revealed a trace of pain. He didn't know why he had turned into a half-human half-beast. In order to survive, he had to hunt demon beasts. The feeling of killing was very terrifying, and it almost made him lose his mind as a human. Fortunately, his willpower was relatively strong, and he was always able to restrain himself in time. That was a year ago. Now I discovered that I can freely control my human form and soul-devouring wolf form. I know what my food is. I need the hearts of demon beasts, and I only eat hearts. I fought in this forest for a few months. Finally, one day, I met a cultivator. That cultivator used to torture gray disciples like me in every possible way. I couldn't control myself, so I killed him. That was the first time I tasted a human heart. So you couldn't control yourself and went to the academy to hunt those cultivators who bullied the Grey Disciples? Muyu asked in a daze. That's right. I like human hearts, but I still have reason. I know that I can't casually kill people. Every time I saw those high and mighty cultivators casually beating up the Grey Disciples, I always felt angry. I always felt that a place like the Academy shouldn't exist in this world. I know everything about the Academy. I stayed there my whole life, and I know every inch of the land there like the back of my hand. I know the structure of the Academy, and I also know how to enter the Academy without anyone noticing. You also saw those tunnels I dug. So, I decided to start looking for the hearts of cultivators as my food. Deacon Sun's face revealed a trace of ruthlessness. Then how do you know who is bullying the Grey Disciples? You don't dare to appear outside the Academy every day, do you? Muyu felt that Deacon Sun's way of doing things was very extreme. Muyu had never liked killing people. However, it was also a fact that the Grey Disciples' lives were regarded as worthless by cultivators. Grey Disciples were often injured by cultivators. Many sex cultivators were extremely excessive in this regard. He didn't know which side he should stand on. I've been managing the Academy for so many years. Don't tell me that I don't trust any of the Grey Disciples? Every day, I let them throw the names of the cultivators who bullied the Grey Disciples into the sewers. Every night, I would enter the courtyard, knock them out with drugs, drag them into the sewers, kill them, and eat their hearts. With my speed, it was more than enough to deal with those building foundation stage disciples. Deacon Sun smiled, revealing his mouth full of yellow teeth. There was actually a trace of ferocity in it. Then why did you kill Xiaohu and the Zhihua school's disciples directly instead of dragging them into the sewers? Them? They are usually the most arrogant and they punish us, the Grey Disciples, the most ruthless. I simply let the world know how they died. This way, I can vent my anger. Especially people like Xiaohu. His death can be said to be a heavy slap to the Qingsong school's face. Deacon Sun laughed. After being bullied for so long, he suddenly found that one day, he had the ability to fight back. This kind of feeling was very strange. Muyu felt a chill in his heart. It seemed that Deacon Sun was no longer the meek old man he used to be. Now, he had become somewhat ruthless. In his eyes, the lives of those people were worthless. He only wanted to take revenge on those cultivators who had once looked down on him. Why didn't you kill me when you were in the sewers? Why did you tell me these things? Deacon Sun shook his head and said, I don't want to kill the innocent. You didn't bully the Grey Disciples, so I can't kill you. Besides, someone told me that you taught the disciples of the Qingsong school and the Zhihua school a lesson the day before yesterday. How could I kill you? He actually paid attention to principles when doing things. Muyu stood up. You said that you don't want to kill the innocent, but you have already killed the innocent. Although those people were abominable, there was no reason for them to die. You shouldn't take their lives so easily. You killed Xiaohu. With the Qingsong Taoist's nascent soul stage cultivation, do you think he can't find out? Qingsong Taoist? Even in his dreams, he wouldn't think that I would kill people underground, would he? Deacon Sun said disdainfully. Muyu sighed. It's not that beautiful. I just checked your body. Your body is very bad. I'm afraid you'll suffer a lot when you transform into a wolf and a human, right? Your muscles, bones, and internal organs are all deformed. How can you bear this kind of pain? After you transform back into a human, you have no strength at all. If you go on like this, what will you do if you fail one day? Deacon Sun clenched his teeth. I know I'm dying. I'm afraid that if I transform a few more times, I'll die of exhaustion. My body is too weak to bear the power of the soul-devouring wolf. But as long as I'm still alive, I'll kill a cultivator who bullied the Grey Disciples. I only hope that the Grey Disciples can be treated better and not be ordered around like dogs all day long. After being a Grey Disciple for a lifetime, he knew that the life of a Grey Disciple was not for a human to live. After he obtained the power of the soul-devouring wolf, he wanted to take revenge. He wanted to do something within his power to improve the situation of the Grey Disciples. This was Deacon Sun's most straightforward method. Deacon Sun wasn't the Chingsong Taoist. He didn't have the power to change the current situation of the Grey Disciples. He could only rely on himself. Mu Yu didn't feel good about the miserable state of the Grey Disciples. However, he also found it hard to accept Deacon Sun's extreme method. Mu Yu also thought that a place like the school shouldn't exist. But how much could Deacon Sun change by doing this? You knew that I would stop you, right? Mu Yu was silent for a long time. Then, he spoke. Deacon Sun smiled. Of course you can. You can kill me now. That would be a kind of relief. I worked as a servant in the school and dreamed of becoming an immortal cultivator all my life. But I ended up like this. This is worse than death. If I don't eat the heart, I will lose my mind. I can't live like a normal person. I gave my whole life to the school. Before I leave, I have to leave something behind. Deacon Sun, do you still remember what a child said to you? If one day he has the power, he will definitely come back and take you away from the school. I'm that child. I don't want you to leave the school by dying. I hope you can come with me to the Falling Dust sect. I will definitely find a way to cure you. I will make you a real cultivator. A decent cultivator identity. Isn't that what you want? Mu Yu sat down again and looked at Deacon Sun earnestly. Deacon Sun was startled. All his life, he had hoped to gain the favor of some sect elder. Whether it was becoming an attendant or a servant, at least he would have the identity of a cultivator. He wouldn't have to suffer the wrath of everyone in the school. However, no one had taken a fancy to his aptitude. Many times, he had wondered why he had spent his whole life pursuing the immortal cultivation dream. Mu Yu's words moved him a little, but he still shook his head. No, I know my time is coming. I don't want anything now. I just want to kill a few people. I want to vent all the resentment in my life. That will be enough. Deacon Sun laughed bitterly. He was so miserable, like a candle flickering in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. However, he still hoped that he could change something for the Grey Disciples. Chapter 92. When Mu Yu stood up, the stones on the surrounding walls suddenly emitted a strange light that shone on his body. This light made Mu Yu feel as if he was immersed in mucus. Immediately after, he found that he couldn't move at all. It was difficult for him to even circulate the spiritual energy in his body. You! Mu Yu was shocked. There was a terrifying force that was forcefully suppressing him, causing his spiritual energy to be unable to circulate. He felt that it was extremely strenuous for him to even lift his arm. He felt as if he was carrying a heavy weight on his back. Don't struggle. With your current foundation establishment stage cultivation, it is impossible for you to break free. Deacon Sun supported himself against the wall and tried to stand up. However, he failed twice. His body was too weak, and he had just been injured by Mu Yu. His situation wasn't optimistic at all. He gasped for breath. After a long time, he said, "This cave of the soul-devouring wolf is very precious. The shiny stones on the surrounding walls are not simple. If I'm not wrong, these are the legendary purple gold spirit stones. The spiritual energy contained within them is thousands of times more than ordinary spirit stones." Purple gold spirit stones? Mu Yu sucked in a breath of cold air. Naturally, he had heard of the purple gold spirit stones. This kind of thing was incomparably precious. One purple gold spirit stone was equivalent to tens of thousands of ordinary spirit stones. The spiritual energy contained within was extremely boundless. It had a huge effect on increasing a cultivator's cultivation speed. It was a treasure that many people yearned for even in their dreams. This kind of thing was extremely rare. If one appeared in the cultivation world, it would be fought over by tens of thousands of people. However, there were so many of them here. It was unknown how many years they had been buried. This was a huge fortune. If other people in the cultivation world were to find out about this, it would definitely cause a reign of terror. Even the Qingsong Taoist and Daoist Zhihua wouldn't be able to resist fighting over it. Many people think that I am just the head of a servant. However, they don't know that I am obsessed with cultivation. I have thoroughly researched many things in the cultivation world. I also have a certain level of attainment in the research of array formations. Even the array formations in the various courtyards of the academy were designed by me. It is not difficult for me to set up an array formation. No matter what kind of array formation it is, it uses spirit stones as the foundation. I can use these purple gold spirit stones to trap you. I once tried to use these purple gold spirit stones to set up a spirit gathering formation, gathering all the spirit chi in the area where you are standing. Unfortunately, my body is too old and my aptitude is poor. I can't withstand such rich spirit chi, so I had to give up. Later, I casually adjusted the position of a few purple gold spirit stones and made it into a spirit-suppressing array. It will make the people in the array unable to mobilize the spirit chi in their bodies and thus make them unable to move, Deacon Sun said with a smile. Do you intend to trap me to death? Mu Yu asked in a low voice. He glanced at the branches at the entrance of the cave and tried to lead them over. Unfortunately, he couldn't touch the branches and couldn't control them. He was a little regretful. He shouldn't have let the tree branch leave his body. He did have some root grasses in his universe in a sleeve, but he couldn't drill into them in front of Deacon Sun. Let me see. Deacon Sun sat for a while and finally regained the strength to stand up. He staggered along the wall, pulling out a purple gold spirit stone from time to time and stuffing it into another crevice. This process took him a lot of time. Every time he pulled out a spirit stone, he had to take a few breaths before continuing. After he fiddled with the purple gold spirit stones, Mu Yu suddenly found that he could move again. However, he was surrounded by an invisible barrier and still couldn't get out. I'll give you a good fortune. Consider it my thanks for not killing me and healing me. Deacon Sun coughed a few times and his face turned pale. He moved a piece of purple gold spirit stone, and then the spirit chi around Mu Yu began to become incomparably rich. The pure spirit chi continuously washed Mu Yu's body, and the spirit chi in his body also began to circulate. The array forced out all the spirit chi contained in the purple gold spirit stone and poured it into the array. Cultivating under such conditions could achieve twice the result with half the effort. Mu Yu was shocked to feel the rich spirit chi around him. He felt that if he cultivated here for a day, it would be equivalent to cultivating outside for a month. It was really extravagant to spend so many purple gold spirit stones on himself. You should stay here and cultivate properly. I've estimated that these spirit stones will probably trap you for a month. You're a good kid and I don't want you to die. You should be free after a month. As for me, Deacon Sun smiled bitterly. I don't think my body can hold on for a month. Do you still want to go to the school? Mu Yu felt very sad. Deacon Sun was still kind at the bottom of his heart. He knew that he didn't have much time left, so he actually gave Mu Yu such a great opportunity. In order to prevent the Grey Disciples from being bullied in the future, Deacon Sun planned to take away a few more pretentious self-cultivators before his life came to an end. He believed that the Grey Disciples would be better off if there were fewer such self-cultivators in the world. He couldn't liberate all the Grey Disciples, so he could only rely on this method to reduce the Grey Disciples' pain. If I'm still alive after a month, I'll come back here and slowly wait for my death. At that time, I hope you can bury me on a high mountain after I die. It's best if it's a place where I can see Qingshou City. I hope that one day, I can see Qingshou City's school destroyed. Deacon Sun looked at Mu Yu quietly. His biggest wish in this life was to become a cultivator with his head held high. But now, it seemed impossible. He understood that all this was caused by the Grey Disciple system of the school. His current injustice was that the school no longer had Grey Disciples, and the Grey Disciples no longer served all the self-cultivators so humbly. However, now that the Qingsong Taoist and Reverend Zhihua had become nascent soul supremacies, even if the Qingsong Alliance and Qingsong Alliance were established in the future, it wouldn't change the status of the Grey Disciples in the slightest. With the Qingsong Taoist and Reverend Zhihua, it was impossible for the school to disappear, and the Grey Disciples would continue to come in. More and more Grey Disciples came in waves to enter the school. Every Grey Disciple had the goal of becoming an immortal, so they silently endured the attitude of the high and mighty Alliance disciples. They didn't dare to resist when they were beaten or scolded, and they didn't have the ability to resist. Deacon Sun had lived his whole life looking at other people's faces, so he knew the sorrow well. He hoped that this kind of sorrow wouldn't appear on the younger generation with poor talent. Mu Yu looked at him. This old man, who had lived such a sad life, was kind, sensible, and full of killing intent. He used the rest of his life to reap the lives of self-cultivators, so that the Grey Disciples' lives could be slightly smoother. Deacon Sun was powerless to change the injustice of the self-cultivator world. He could only rely on his own meager strength to maintain a little justice. His justice was bloody, but he didn't know if it was the right path. Should the Grey Disciples be ordered around by others? Should the self-cultivators who bullied the Grey Disciples be killed? Was Deacon Sun right to kill those arrogant self-cultivators? Who could tell if the path in this world was righteous or evil? Mu Yu remembered what his master often told him. When you feel that you have a clear conscience, your path is righteous. Deacon Sun did this with a clear conscience. He only killed those who bullied the Grey Disciples and didn't kill Mu Yu. In his eyes, his path was righteous. Are you really not going to consider what I said? Mu Yu's heart was very heavy. He knew that if Deacon Sun continued to do this kind of thing, sooner or later, he would become the public enemy of the self-cultivator world. The people of the school weren't fools. One day they would find Deacon Sun and catch him. When that time came, Deacon Sun's fate would be very miserable. Follow you to the Falling Dust sect and be your servant? Deacon Sun asked with a smile. He gradually remembered Mu Yu from 2 years ago. At that time, Mu Yu told Deacon Sun very seriously that if Mu Yu had the ability one day, he would definitely come back to help Deacon Sun leave the school. You know that's not what I meant. I just want to help you. Mu Yu shook his head. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring. Deacon Sun stood up for him at that time, and Mu Yu would never forget this. Actually, I've heard about you. I know that your name is Mu Yu, and I also know that you defeated the insufferably arrogant genius of Qingsong School, Xiaohu. Your future is limitless, and I can't have great achievements. I've been a servant my whole life, so it makes no difference to me to be your servant. However, I know the current situation in the self-cultivator world. Those disciples told me that the self-cultivator world will only have Qingsong School and Zhihua School in the future. If I follow you, I'm afraid those people won't let me go. Instead, I'll implicate you. Deacon Sun sighed. Maybe Mu Yu had the ability to save him from the abyss of suffering, but what he had done now meant that he could no longer have a foothold in the self-cultivator world. Once the matter was exposed, what awaited him would be a disaster. He couldn't be a burden to anyone else. When I was bullied by Xiaohu as a Grey Disciple, you spoke up for me. Do you know how important that was to me? You showed me another side of the self-cultivator world, and I've always been grateful to you. I just want to repay you. I dared to provoke Qingsong School and Zhihua School. Do you think I'm afraid of being implicated by you? Mu Yu said. Deacon Sun was silent. He didn't expect that his actions at that time would make Mu Yu so grateful, but he was unwilling to let those people go. For a quarter of an hour, no one spoke. The two of them were silent. Then, Deacon Sun broke the silence. 1 month. I'll stop after 1 month. If I'm still alive after 1 month, you can do whatever you want. After Deacon Sun finished speaking, his face suddenly revealed a pained expression. He roared and jumped up high. All the bones in his body were trembling. Then, he turned back into a soul-devouring wolf. There was no trace of ferocity in the soul-devouring wolf's eyes. There was only the vicissitudes and tiredness of Deacon Sun's life, which were full of desolation. Deacon Sun shook his body. Turning back into a wolf made him feel less painful. Sometimes, being a wolf seemed to be easier than being a human. He slowly left the cave. About 2 hours later, Deacon Sun came back with a string of fruits and a few demonic beasts in his mouth. He howled twice in a low voice and then never came back. Mu Yu's mood was very complicated. He looked at the mellow spirit gathering formation and understood that he would have to stay in this formation for a month. Now that his master's whereabouts were unknown and his cultivation was not high, it was impossible for him to compete with the Qingsong Taoist, let alone the red-clothed young man behind the Qingsong Taoist. The most important thing for him now was to improve his strength. Chapter 93. In the world of cultivators, there were always all kinds of unreconciled things. Everyone always wanted to do something to fill the unwillingness in their hearts, even if that thing was insignificant. Because they didn't have the ability to subvert the whole world, they wanted to improve it a little. Deacon Sun returned to the academy. He thought that if there were fewer self-cultivators who did not know how to respect others in the cultivation world, the Grey disciples would have a better life in the future. Therefore, he wanted to do his best to improve the situation. Mu Yu also didn't like the darkness and fighting in the world of cultivators. In this world where strength was respected, those with higher cultivation would rule those with lower cultivation. For treasures, brothers could turn against each other, but for selfish desires, human lives didn't matter. In the world of cultivators, the evil of human nature was obvious. However, Mu Yu still loved this world. He had people he cared about, and the people he cared about also cared about him. Because of the fetters, he knew what he wanted to pursue. Mu Yu knew what he lacked. It was time and strength. He had his own talent, but he didn't have time to develop it. Time didn't give him enough strength. Therefore, when Deacon Sun gave him a good fortune, he understood that this was his chance. Pure spiritual energy rolled in and shrouded Mu Yu's body. Mu Yu sat quietly with his legs crossed. The spiritual energy in his body was already rotating, leading the spiritual energy into his body and circling around his dantian. The spiritual energy entered the body and was transformed into spiritual energy through his dantian, broadening the meridians in the body. It was a slow process, but in this spirit-gathering array, the speed increased by 100 times. Under the guidance of the falling dust cultivation method, a steady stream of spiritual energy washed the meridians in his body. He absorbed the spiritual energy over and over again, even forgetting the time. He only knew that this precious spiritual energy might be hard to come by in the future. 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to 1 month of cultivation in the past. This kind of terrifying cultivation speed would make anyone ecstatic. At this moment, the world of cultivators was very peaceful. Every sect had no choice but to compromise because they didn't have the ability to resist. Nascent soul venerables could cover the sky with one hand. If they didn't agree, the foundation left by their ancestors would be destroyed. But if they agreed, the foundation would remain, just under a different name. Everyone knew that whether it was the Pine Tree Alliance or the Johua Alliance, it was impossible for them to place so many disciples in the same place. The mountain gate of each school would not disappear just like that. Instead, it would continue to exist in the form of submitting to the two great schools. However, it was likely that each school would be managed in the same way as the Qingsong School and the Jiuhua School by a designated leader. The so-called Qingsong School Alliance and Jiuhua Alliance were just names. In reality, every disciple would still be in their own school, but the cultivation methods they would receive would be uniformly regulated by either the Qingsong School or the Jiuhua School. The Qingsong School or the Jiuhua School would also send elders to each school. In this way, they would gradually change a school, encroach on a school, and turn the school into a subordinate of the Qingsong School. After all, reform needed to be done step by step. It was unrealistic to change the current structure of every sect all at once. The cultivation world seemed to be very peaceful, but in reality, it was surging with undercurrents. The Jiuhua School and the Qingsong School were secretly interfering with the choices of the people of each school. The people of the small schools were already in a state of panic. No matter which school they chose, they would offend the other school. Moreover, the opinions within the schools were not unified. Many schools even had internal strife because of this. The Qiantian School's Boyang Daoren sat in the seat of honor with an ashen face. The several elders below him were already arguing endlessly about which school to join. Naturally, it's better to join the Qingsong School. The Qingsong Taoist used to suppress Jinren Jiuhua. The strength of the Qingsong School is also obvious to all. If we join the Qingsong School, it will also be beneficial for the future development of our school. A red-faced old Taoist insisted on his opinion. Senior brother Buyuan, you're wrong. The Qingsong Taoist's disciple, Xiaohu, was killed. The murderer has yet to be brought to justice. We all know that this matter must have been done by the Jiuhua School. However, the Qingsong Taoist did not go to the Jiuhua School to ask for an explanation. Doesn't this mean that the Qingsong Taoist is afraid of Jinren Jiuhua? In my opinion, joining the Jiuhua School is the right choice. A gray-robed nun sneered. This nun looked to be in her 40s and was still charming. However, she was actually in her 80s and her cultivation level was at the first layer of the Golden Core realm. Junior Sister Bohua, everyone knows that you had an ambiguous relationship with the Jiuhua School's Taoist 7 birds. I'm afraid you're saying this because you can't wait to see your old lover, right? A short and fat old Taoist with a curly beard laughed. Bopping, if you talk nonsense again, I'll cut off your tongue. Reverend Boa glared at him with her almond-shaped eyes. Come and try if you have the ability, old Taoist Bopping said while twirling his beard. Are you guys done messing around? Do you still have any respect for me, the head of the school? Boyang Daoren slapped the table, and the wooden table turned into powder. The school is about to perish. Instead of thinking about how to continue the incense of your ancestors, you're thinking about how to submit to others and who to submit to. In the future, how will you face your ancestors in the underworld? Taoist Bo Xing, who had a goatee and had not spoken, smiled. Head of the school, you know the current situation better than anyone else. If the inheritance left by our ancestors is so useful, why can't our school raise its head in the cultivation world? Now we can only go with the flow. Maybe it can give our school a chance to survive. What's more, Taoist Bo Xing suddenly showed a mocking expression. It doesn't matter whether or not we have any respect for you, the head of the school, because in the future, the head of this school may change hands. Impudent! Boyang Daoren stood up. His cultivation base of the 5th layer of Jindan burst out. He angrily looked at Taoist Bo Xing, and the anger in his heart could no longer be concealed. The other people's faces changed. Taoist Bo Xing also stood up. He was forced to retreat a few steps by Boyang Daoren, but he still had a smile on his face. Senior brother, so what if your cultivation base is high? You can only vent your anger on us. How will you face Reverend Jiuhua? Reverend Jiuhua said that whoever is in charge of this school will be in charge of it. Bo Xing, what do you mean by that? Could it be that you've been bribed by Jiuhua school? Bo Yuan also stood up and scolded. Bo Xing lazily glanced at his fellow apprentices and said, I can't say that I've been bribed. I'm indebted to Reverend Jiuhua for taking a fancy to me. I'm just adapting to the circumstances. Head of the school, you've been in charge for so many years, but our school has never been able to develop. Not to mention that you've also appreciated and had a good personal relationship with the ridiculous Falling Dust School. If you don't think about making progress, you'll be letting down your ancestors. Taoist Bo Xing fearlessly looked at Boyang Daoren. The elders of the Jiuhua school had already found him and promised that if the Qiantian school surrendered to the Jiuhua school, they would support him to become the new head of the Qiantian school. With the support of the elders of the Jiuhua school, what did he have to fear? Brother Bo Xing's words are reasonable. It's just a pity that young Master Bai Liang of the Qingsong school also came looking for me a few days ago. Like you, I adapt to the circumstances. I'm afraid that we'll have to serve different masters in the future. The Qiantian school may not necessarily have you as the head of the school. The short and fat Taoist Bo Ping said unhurriedly. You. Boyang Daoren looked at his two fellow apprentices. They had already switched sides and were beginning to deceive their masters and destroy their ancestors to discuss who would become the head of the school. Boyang Daoren suddenly laughed. He felt very sad. His fellow apprentices had been arguing for decades, but he always thought that everyone was working hard for their own school. He didn't expect that it was just his own wishful thinking. When disaster strikes, everyone flies separately. This sentence was really right. Good, good, good. Boyang Daoren said good 3 times in a row. The momentum of his whole body suddenly dissipated, and he suddenly became so old. After becoming the head of the Qiantian school, he had been cautious and conscientious, not daring to slack off for even a moment. He only hoped that the Qiantian school could get out of its current predicament as soon as possible. And this year, his disciple Gu Etian had finally fought hard and won 3rd place. He had already seen the hope of the school's future. The development of the Qiantian school was just around the corner, but he didn't want to be directly extinguished by 2 nascent soul cultivators. Now that his fellow apprentices had also begun to rebel, for a moment he was isolated and helpless. A wave of tiredness hit him, and he felt very tired. You guys, very good. Taoist Bo Yang slowly turned around. His body suddenly became crooked, as though he was an old man in his twilight years, causing others to feel sad for him. He didn't look at his fellow apprentices who were still arguing. He left the hall alone and walked to the back of the mountain. He came to the ancestral hall of the ancestors and knelt down in front of the ancestors. Master. Gu Etian also came in and knelt down beside Boyang Daoren. He was not good with words, and he didn't know what to say at this moment. Etian, do you also think that I'm useless? Boyang Daoren's voice was no longer as cheerful as before. It became very sad, as if he had suddenly aged more than 10 years. The heavy burden of the school had been on him for so many years, and he had persevered. But today, he was bitterly disappointed. He couldn't help but ask himself, what had he been persevering for so many years? No, Master, it's them who are ungrateful and deceiving you. I know that the people from Qingsong School and Jiuhua School came to you first, but you rejected them. That's why they were successful. No matter what Master does, I believe that Master is right. Gu Etian said firmly. Boyang Daoren looked at Gu Etian with relief. At least there was someone who supported him. Although Gu Etian was usually stubborn and didn't listen to anyone in the school, he only listened to Boyang Daoren. That day, Boyang Daoren took a fancy to Gu Etian from a group of grey disciples and took him as his disciple. Although Gu Etian's talent was mediocre, he was hard-working. A few months ago, He defeated the geniuses of other schools, making everyone look at him in a new light. Boyang Doran's proudest thing in his life was taking Gu Etian as his disciple. With your talent, I'm afraid that Qingsong School and Zhihua School will take you away. Your future is not in Qiantian School, and I don't want to restrict you. No matter which school you join, I won't object. I just hope that when Qiantian School faces a crisis in the future, you can help it. I'll be satisfied. Boyang Doran lit 3 incense sticks and inserted them into the incense burner. He bowed respectfully, picked up the horsetail whisk, and brushed the dust off the memorial tablet. Master, I'm a disciple of Qiantian School. I won't join any school. Wherever Master is, I'll be there, Gu Etian said. Boyang Doran smiled. You don't have to comfort me. I'm old. Following me will only delay you. It's enough that you have the heart. If you don't want to join Qingsong School and Zhihua School, then go down the mountain. Go as far as you can. Go to a place where they can't find you. The path of body cultivation is too difficult. You have to go on by yourself. If you have the ability, go out of the Moyen Mountains and explore the outside world. The ancient books left by the ancestors said that the real cultivation world is outside the Moyen Mountains. Unfortunately, it's too difficult to go out. There are many high-level monsters there. If you want to go out, you must be careful. Gu Etian shook his head. Master, I won't go. Don't, Boyang Doran patted Gu Etian on the shoulder. Don't worry. I won't go to the underground to meet my ancestors so soon. Those heartless guys deceived their masters and destroyed their ancestors. If I leave, the ancestral hall won't be safe. I won't care about the school in the future. They can do whatever they want. As long as I'm alive, I'll guard it. I can't protect the foundation left by the ancestors, but I can't let others tarnish the memorial tablet of the ancestors. Gu Etian looked at Boyang Doran. He knew how to go. He kowtowed 3 times to Boyang Doran, then turned and left without saying anything. He didn't have the ability to protect his master or his school now. Only by becoming stronger could he change all of this. The road he walked was difficult and dangerous, but he had to go on for the belief in his heart. Chapter 94. People went missing in the school every day. However, the school was a place where crooks mixed with honest folk. People came and went. Even if someone went missing in the school, it was assumed that they had left the school and went somewhere else. No one would have thought that a black shadow would appear in the school every night. It would come and go like a ghost, reaping the lives of every cultivator who bullied the gray disciples and keeping them in the school forever. However, there was always a fire in the paper. 1 or 2 missing people might not attract attention, but when many people went missing in the school, careful people would find some clues. It was impossible for the black shadow to come and go without a trace forever. When someone really investigated this matter, they would find some witnesses. Xiaohu's death caused a great sensation. This was a matter of face, so Qingsong School could not ignore it. Combined with the mysterious disappearance of many disciples in the school, the investigators of Qingsong School began to pay attention to some details that had been overlooked before. In the dark and damp drainage channel, Deacon Sun lay in the passage. He gasped for breath and coughed continuously. Every time he coughed, his body would tremble severely. Sometimes he could hardly breathe. It seems that I can't hold on for more than a few days. Deacon Sun closed his eyes. After a long time, he exhaled heavily. He thought of Mu Yu, who was trapped in the cave of the soul-eating wolf. We know each other. I may not even have the strength to go back. After he escapes, will he come here to take my body out? Deacon Sun's face was as pale as a sheet of white paper because he had not seen the sun for many days. When he was in his human form, he was only in the qi refining stage. When he was in his wolf form, he was only in the foundation establishment stage. Sometimes he would laugh at himself. His talent was so poor that he had tarnished a noble species like the soul-eating wolf. When a soul-eating wolf reached adulthood, it was a demonic beast that could stand shoulder to shoulder with the cultivators of the Jindan period. However, he was only in the foundation establishment stage. The moment he transformed into a soul-devouring wolf was very painful. All of his bones and internal organs were being squeezed, but the soul-devouring wolf's speed and strength made him obsessed. He could easily take down a foundation establishment stage cultivator. This was something he didn't even dare to think about in the past. Every time he saw those high and mighty cultivators in the foundation establishment stage die in his hands, he felt that the evil in his heart was reduced a little. It was just that the evil aura had lessened, but the evil aura had intensified. When he first transformed into a soul-devouring wolf, his mind was always filled with thoughts of slaughter. However, he was able to forcefully restrain that desire. He could remain clear-headed and quietly abduct those people in his wolf form without alerting others. Now that he had transformed into a soul-devouring wolf, his consciousness was unable to control his wolf nature. He knew that if he transformed a few more times, he would never be able to turn back into a human again. Shah! Once again, Deacon Sun heard the sound of a ball of paper falling into the drain. This piece of paper was from one of the Gray disciples. The disciple in gray was named Zhou Xinyu. He used to be the person he valued the most. He was diligent and down-to-earth. He also longed to step into the ranks of cultivators one day so that he would not have to suffer in the academy for the rest of his life. Therefore, when Deacon Sun secretly found him and discussed this plan with him, he agreed to it. Deacon Sun struggled to crawl over and pick it up. Then, he looked at it under the dim light. Luiwa sect, Moziu, who lives in the left wing, broke the left arm of Lu Xiaowei, a disciple of the academy. Deacon Sun clenched his fists and tore the note to shreds. Every time he received a note, it meant that another Gray disciple was injured and crippled. This made him feel very uncomfortable. They were all humans. Why would the high and mighty cultivators be so ruthless when they were unhappy? The lives of the Gray disciples were really worthless. I can't kill many people. I'll kill as many as I can. Deacon Sun looked at the sky. It would be dark in 4 hours. He found a comfortable place to lie down. The drain was damp and cold. Fortunately, his body had become stronger because of the soul-devouring wolf demon spirit. Otherwise, he would freeze to death here. His whole body was emitting a stench and the smell of a wolf. Even the rats in the drain did not dare to approach him. The moon climbed up the branches. He liked to look at the moon the most. Every night when he saw the moon, he wanted to howl and vent all the dissatisfaction in his heart. However, he could not howl. He had to restrain himself. Otherwise, he would wake up the others in the academy. He did not have to howl to vent his dissatisfaction. He could also vent his dissatisfaction by seeing blood. Deacon Sun got up. A painful expression appeared on his face again. His whole body changed rapidly. Soon, a soul-devouring wolf with messy hair appeared in the drain. The hair on his whole body had scabbed. There were many places where his skin was exposed. His 2 tails also looked very tired. The soul-devouring wolf was a little dispirited. It whimpered and panted heavily. It shook its body and slowly walked toward the drain of the Luiwesek's courtyard. Its sharp claws flashed with cold light. Cut a whole piece of the drain open like cutting tofu. Then, it flashed into the courtyard. The candlelight in the left wing room had been extinguished. That Moziu should have fallen asleep. The consequence of not treating the Gray disciples as humans was that they could no longer be humans. He stretched out his sharp claws and pushed open the window. Then, he rushed in. His eyes were shining in the dark. He could vaguely see a person lying on the bed. That was the target. He flicked his sharp claws. His claws had a paralyzing poison. As long as he lightly scratched the skin of a self-cultivator, the self-cultivator would fall into a coma. He pounced over. His claws were already in front of him. It was so easy to succeed. It made him happy. He could not kill this Emoziu here. He had to drag him into the drain and devour his heart. Bang! The window that he just came in from was suddenly closed. Before Deacon Sun could react, the lights in the room lit up. He did not know when, but there were already a few people standing in the room. Everyone had their own magic weapons lit up in their hand. Very good. You did not lie. There really is a soul-devouring wolf. Bai Liang snorted coldly. Why is Bai Liang here? Deacon Sun panicked. He retreated to the door and saw a young man trembling behind Bai Liang. It was the Grey Disciple, Zhou Xinyu, who gave him the paper notes every day. Why is Zhou Xinyu here? He should not be here. Zhou Xinyu looked at the soul-devouring wolf that had turned into Deacon Sun in fear. A trace of pity flashed in his eyes, but it was quickly replaced by a trace of ruthlessness. He was a Grey Disciple. After so many years in the academy, he knew that it was almost impossible for him to stand out. The only one who could help him was Deacon Sun. Deacon Sun seemed to have understood something. When I catch this beast, you will no longer be a Grey Disciple, Bai Liang said to Zhou Xinyu. Deacon Sun's heart sank. He suddenly understood that he had been betrayed. The Grey Disciple that he had always protected stood on the side of the self-cultivators and sold him out. The truth behind the bloody case of the academy would be revealed. In order to get rid of his identity as a Grey Disciple and become a self-cultivator who could bully the Grey Disciples, Zhou Xinyu had made a choice against his conscience. Deacon Sun groaned in anger. He had been living in the drain for the past few months, dragging out an ignoble existence. He had killed every self-cultivator who bullied the Grey Disciples to vent their anger. But in the end, he was betrayed by the Grey Disciples? Deacon Sun's heart sank. He roared. His anger had drowned out his reason. He wanted to rush up and question Zhou Xinyu. He wanted to ask him why he had done this. He even wanted to dig out Zhou Xinyu's heart to see what it tasted like. Was it emitting a disgusting stench of decay? However, Bai Liang had already made his move. A sword aura heavily slashed Deacon Sun's body. Deacon Sun screamed and was thrown out. He crashed into the door and smashed a big hole in it. His body smashed into the courtyard. Beast! Die! Bai Liang had already followed him out. Another sword aura slashed down. However, Deacon Sun was now a soul-devouring wolf. He was a third-rank demonic beast. It was just that he couldn't unleash the strength he had during the Jindan period. His speed and valiant physique were still there. Bai Liang's sword aura only left a bloody wound on his body. Although it was deep, it wasn't fatal. Deacon Sun howled and jumped into the drain. The moment he fell into the drain, he clearly heard the Grey Disciple Zhou Xinyu yell, "Quick! He's gone into the drain. If he escapes, we won't be able to catch up with him." Why? Deacon Sun didn't understand. The bitterness of being betrayed swept over him. He thought that as a Grey Disciple, they should have a common enemy. However, in order to get rid of the identity of a Grey Disciple, Zhou Xinyu actually used him as a stepping stone to become a cultivator? A crazy desire to kill surged in his heart. He wanted to taste Zhou Xinyu's heart. However, he couldn't kill anyone. In front of Bai Liang, he had to escape. However, just as he fell into the drain, he felt dizzy. He had no strength. He didn't kill anyone last night, so he didn't eat the heart. Now that he was injured, he felt that he could no longer maintain his wolf form. The bones and muscles in his body began to twist. He couldn't run anymore. He turned back into a human. He knew that he was finished. Why? Why did this happen? Deacon Sun was not reconciled. Before he died, he tried his best to kill those cultivators who bullied the Grey Disciples just so that they would suffer less in the future. He did so much for the Grey Disciples to have a better life in the future. However, what did he get in return? He didn't understand. He really didn't understand. He killed those cultivators who bullied the weak. The Grey Disciples should be grateful to him. Why did they betray him? Deacon Sun suddenly remembered what Zhou Xinyu once said to him. I want to be a person who can bully others, not a person who is bullied. Deacon Sun revealed a bleak smile. Zhou Xinyu seized the opportunity to betray Deacon Sun. In the future, he could fulfill his wish of becoming a cultivator who bullied others. However, with Zhou Xinyu's talent, he couldn't go far on the road of cultivation. He couldn't bully cultivators who were more talented than him. It seemed that the only people he could bully were the Grey Disciples. The Grey Disciples got rid of their identity as Grey Disciples and turned to bully other Grey Disciples. Coldness filled his whole body. It seemed as if a thick layer of frost had formed on his heart. This world was so realistic. The so-called trust and justice were all a joke. When there was a brilliant road in front of him, those were not worth mentioning. I've been a Grey Disciple all my life. I've pursued the immortal cultivation dream all my life. How could I forget that all Grey Disciples live for the sake of not being a Grey Disciple? Deacon Sun smiled bitterly and coughed up another pool of blood. The Grey Disciples were used to being bullied. In order to not be bullied again, it seemed natural for them to do things that went against their conscience. Chase. Don't let that bastard escape. Deacon soon heard footsteps and angry shouts of pursuit. He vaguely saw a person running to his side, squatting down, and then grabbing him. He wanted to push the person away, but he didn't have the strength to continue resisting. He knew that he was finished. The Grey Disciples had already confessed that he was the murderer who killed everyone. Now that they saw him return to his human form, they would definitely capture him and bring him back. As a servant of the school, he had killed so many cultivators. He was afraid that his end would be quite miserable. What was more serious was that Xiao Hu, the proud son of heaven of Qingsong School, had also died in his hands. He was afraid that when the time came, even if he wanted to die, it would be an extravagant hope. Just die. I'll be free if I die. Deacon Sun's consciousness gradually blurred. A tear streaked across the corner of his eye. Chapter 95. It was like a dream. Deacon Sun hadn't slept for so long in a long time. He gradually regained consciousness. A wave of pain swept over him. His whole body felt like it was falling apart. His bones and internal organs were burning with pain. Deacon Sun opened his eyes and found himself lying on a thick bed. The top was covered with a black gauze curtain, and the quilt was very soft. He hadn't slept with a quilt for a long time. This long-awaited feeling made him very satisfied. However, he realized that something was wrong. He had been caught by the people of Qingsong School, but why was he in this strange room? Deacon Sun lifted the quilt and struggled to get up. He didn't know when he had put on his clothes. Ever since he became a soul-eating wolf, he almost never wore normal clothes again. At this moment, the door was pushed open and a person walked in. Great, you're awake. It was Mu Yu who came in. He saw Deacon Sun sitting up, and his expression relaxed slightly. It's you? Why are you here? Didn't they catch me? Deacon Sun looked at Mu Yu in surprise. Mu Yu smiled. Fortunately, I rescued you before they did. Otherwise, it's hard to say. Mu Yu came just in time. When Bai Liang and the others were about to catch Deacon Sun, he took him out of the sewer first. After the spirit-gathering formation used by Deacon Sun to surround Mu Yu failed, Mu Yu immediately rushed to the school. He rushed directly into the Grey Disciples' courtyard and found the note in the sewer under the courtyard. He knew that Deacon Sun was going to the Luiwesek's courtyard to kill people, so he immediately rushed to the Luiwesek's courtyard through the sewer. He originally wanted to stop Deacon Sun from killing people again, but Deacon Sun's action failed, and he was almost caught. If Mu Yu hadn't been fast enough, it would have been difficult for him to escape from Bai Liang with Deacon Sun. This is the Luochen sect. You're safe, Mu Yu said. Deacon Sun didn't speak. He looked haggard and was in a very low mood. He remembered what had happened to Zhou Xinyu that night. Being betrayed by the Grey Disciples had cast a shadow over his heart. For the Grey Disciples, he endured unimaginable pain, living in the dark and rotting sewers, waiting, but in the end it was just a joke. He thought that although what he did was not great, at least he had a clear conscience. The betrayal of the Grey Disciple made him lose the will to live. Deacon Sun opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. However, in the end, his lips wriggled and he only spat out 2 words, "Thank you. I want to thank you. Because of your spirit-gathering formation, I've broken through to the Jindan period." Mu Yu grinned, and an aura of the Jindan period spread out from him. Cultivating in the spirit-gathering array for a month was equivalent to cultivating in the outside world for 2 years. In addition to Mu Yu's outstanding talent, the spiritual energy provided by the purple gold spirit stone allowed Mu Yu to step into the Jindan period from the 5th firmament of foundation establishment. What? You've stepped into the Jindan period? Deacon Sun was shocked. Although he knew that the spirit-gathering array formed by the purple gold spirit stone could provide a lot of spiritual energy, 1 month of cultivation was equivalent to 2 years of cultivation. Even Xiaohu, who was outstanding in Qingsong school, couldn't reach the Jindan period after cultivating for 2 years. Mu Yu could do this. Was his talent higher than Xiaohu's? Mu Yu's talent was higher than Xiaohu's. This was not only known to Deacon Sun, but also to the self-cultivators in the Maoyun mountain range. He felt the aura of the Jindan period flowing around Mu Yu's body and believed most of it. He had stayed in the school for almost a lifetime and had seen people from various sects in the cultivation world. He had also served the elders and leaders of various sects during the Jindan period. Mu Yu's aura was exactly the same as those people's. But this is too unbelievable, Deacon Sun couldn't help but say. I don't know how to explain this to you. Let's not talk about my talent. Anyway, I've already talked to Senior Brother and Shu and the others. From now on, you're a member of the Falling Dust sect. You're no longer a Grey Disciple of the school. Mu Yu didn't explain his original talent. If his talent had been displayed on the spirit testing stone normally, it would have been the highest level of purple, which would have stunned everyone present. The Falling Dust sect never recruited random people, only those who deserved to be recruited. However, Deacon Sun had the ability to create a spirit-gathering array to help Mu Yu break through to the Jindan period. This incredible method made everyone realize that Deacon Sun wasn't an unnecessary person. And Shu had also agreed. Everyone knew that with this ability, it wouldn't be a bad thing to keep Deacon Sun. What did you just say? Deacon Sun doubted his ears. You're no longer a Grey Disciple of the school, but a member of the Falling Dust sect. Of course, I don't know if you're willing to come to our sect. In any case, the other sects look down on us. Mu Yu shrugged. The other sects looked down on the Falling Dust sect because they were too narrow-minded. The talent of all the disciples in his sect could crush anyone in the Maoyun mountain range. Deacon Sun was stunned. Wasn't his wish for most of his life to get rid of his status as a Grey Disciple and become a cultivator that everyone respected? He had worked hard all his life, thinking that he would never be able to embark on the path of immortal cultivation. But now it had actually come true? Mu Yu continued, I told you long ago that I would help you leave the school and no longer make you a Grey Disciple. As for whether you want to leave or stay, I won't force you. If you want to live a peaceful life again and spend your old age in peace, you can leave. If you're willing to stay, we welcome you. Deacon Sun gritted his teeth. He was still worried about one thing. Do the others in your sect agree? Do they know that I killed people? Do they know that I'm a soul-devouring wolf? I told them. And Shu told me that he has a way to help you suppress the wolf nature in your body. Actually, you can choose whether or not you want to transform into a wolf. As long as you suppress the wolf nature in your body, you won't be affected by the soul-devouring wolf and won't have the desire to kill. As for your killing, I hope you won't do it again. Our falling dust sect doesn't like to kill the innocent, Mu Yu said seriously. Deacon Sun smiled bitterly. After being betrayed by a Grey disciple, how could he help a Grey disciple kill someone again? The bloody incident in the school had made him understand one thing. Some things couldn't be changed just because he wanted to. He had been killing the cultivators who had bullied the Grey disciples. What he was doing was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. In the end, he had almost harmed himself. Grey disciples were definitely pitiful in some ways, but some pitiful Grey disciples were also detestable. Can I see them? See Lord Feng Haochen? Deacon Sun asked. Hearing the name Feng Haochen, Mu Yu's face darkened. A few months had passed, and there was still no news of his master. He was very anxious, but being anxious was useless. The only thing he could be sure of was that the Qingsong Taoist hadn't captured his master, and the red-clothed youth hadn't succeeded either. This was good news among the bad news. Deacon Sun, you should recover first. I won't disturb your rest. I'll come find you later. Mu Yu stood up and smiled at Deacon Sun. I'm no longer a deacon of the school. My name is Sun Jingsho. You can just call me by my name in the future. Mu Yu thought for a moment. I'll call you Elder Sun from now on. After all, you're my elder. Calling you by your name is too abrupt. Elder Sun was a little touched. He had been a servant in the school all his life. Everyone called him Deacon Sun. Those who knew his name would also call him by his name. However, Mu Yu treated him like an elder. A cultivator from the Jindan period treated him like an elder, while he was only in the qi refining stage. This made him feel flattered. He didn't know how to treat this matter, so he could only say, "You can call me whatever you want." Mu Yu left Elder Sun's room and bumped into Qingyan. He's awake? Qingyan asked tiredly. It wasn't just him. Everyone's mental state was not very good in the past few months when their master was missing. Mu Yu nodded. Senior brother, did the people from the Qingsong school and Zhihua school come to trouble us? Qingyan and Mu Yu walked outside together. He sighed and said, How could they not come? They've come twice this month, and I've sent them away. Last time, I promised to give them an answer in 10 days. Calculating the time, they should be here in 3 days. This time, Mu Yu sneaked out and disappeared for a month. When he came back, he even brought a dying stranger with him. Even the good-tempered Qingyan scolded Mu Yu. However, seeing that Mu Yu disappeared for a month, and came back as a cultivator from the Jindan period, and even found out that their master was not in Qingsong school, Qingyan's anger was diverted. Senior brother, you arranged for them to come together? Mu Yu said in surprise. Qingyan's lips curled up slightly. We can't join any alliance anyway. Let them come together. I want to see what will happen when the two of them meet. If a dog bites another dog, it will only make a mouthful of fur. Mu Yu snickered. Senior brother, you've learned bad things. Let's take it one step at a time. According to the information you gathered, Master wasn't caught by the young man in red. Then it's very likely that the mysterious person behind Immortal Zhihua kidnapped Master. I'm thinking of joining Zhihua school and seeing if I can sneak into Zhihua school to investigate. Mu Yu also had the same idea. Last time, he wanted to sneak into Zhihua school, but unfortunately, he was blocked by the nascent soul stage array. If he joined Zhihua school, he would be able to get in legitimately. Then, with Mu Yu's ability, he would have a chance to find out more about the situation. Now that Ling and Xiang Nan have also entered the Jindan period, no one in our school is in the foundation establishment stage, except for those two troublemakers and Old Sun. Will they recruit us in the Jindan period? The cultivation method of cultivators in the Jindan period is fixed. They can't change their cultivation methods like those in the foundation establishment stage, Mu Yu said. They don't know that the three of you have entered the Jindan period. Qingyan blinked. The news that he had entered the Jindan period had spread, but the news that Mu Yu and the others had entered the Jindan period had not spread. Besides, even if they know that you are also in the Jindan period, they will probably try their best to win you over. Why would they reject you? A golden core stage cultivator at such a young age is no joke. Lan Ling, and Xiang Nan had also entered the Jindan period in the past month. They were originally in the 9th layer of the Foundation establishment stage, so it was not surprising that they had successfully broken through during this month's hard work. Mu Yu laughed. The Dustfall mantra could hide one's cultivation level. In order not to attract too much attention, they tried their best to pretend to be cultivators in the Foundation establishment stage. As long as they were careful, they did not have to worry about being discovered. Do you think that the people from the two sects will fight here? Mu Yu didn't like the people from the two sections. It would be good if both sides were injured. Chapter 96. Over the past few months, the atmosphere in Falling Dust Mountain had been gloomy, not only because the sect master had disappeared, but also because they had to taste Enshu's cooking every day. Enshu's cooking skills were a disaster in the cooking world. There was probably no one who could make simple stir-fried vegetables so disgusting. Everyone sat quietly at the table, no one wanting to be the first to eat. Every day they had to muster up their courage to calm down before using their chopsticks with great willpower to pick up the food with trembling fingers, hold their breath, and swallow directly, not allowing the food to linger on the tip of the tongue for even a breath. In the end, they had to go against their conscience and say that it was delicious. Master is not here. My silly sister has starved and become thin. Kong Kong pinched Meow Meow's face, revealing a trace of distress. Brother Kong Kong, you're still growing, hurry up and eat more. Meow Meow pushed a plate of charred meat in front of Kong Kong. Sister, brother's heart aches for you. Kong Kong pushed the plate back to Meow Meow. Brother, I know you love sister the most. Meow Meow pushed the plate back. Those who didn't know would think that these two little fellows loved each other and were very courteous, a pair of brothers and sisters with deep affection. However, those who knew the inside story understood that these two fellows were not so kind, and neither of them was willing to lose out. When Enshu went to the kitchen to serve the dishes, they began to compete. Greetings, sirs. Elder Sun walked in accompanied by Mu Yu. The aura of the Jindan period filled the hall, causing him to be extremely shocked. In his eyes, the cultivators of the Jindan period were all high and mighty. He had served many cultivators of the Jindan period before. Most of them looked down on gray disciples, ordering them around and scolding them for the slightest disrespect. At this moment, other than the twins, everyone else in the room was of the Jindan period, and they were all so young. How could he not be in awe? Elder Sun is here? No need to be so polite, take a seat. Qingyan nodded kindly. Mu Yu had already informed everyone that Elder Sun had helped Mu Yu reach the Jindan period in a short period of time. This ability was acknowledged by everyone, and they all tacitly agreed that he would stay in the Falling Dust sect. Other things aside, since Elder Sun had helped Mu Yu, he could be considered a guest elder of the Falling Dust sect. No, there's no need. How could I be worthy? I'll wait for you outside. When old Sun thought about eating at the same table as a few cultivators from the Jindan period, he felt his mouth go dry. That was a real Jindan period. Right now, he was just an old man in the chi refining stage. The people here could easily deal with him with just a finger. How could he dare to be arrogant? He could only be submissive in front of a group of juniors. We're all on the same side, so why are there so many formalities? Sit, sit. Mu Yu pulled old Sun to sit beside the two idle kids. He also sat down beside them. Old Sun was very uncomfortable sitting there. Although the others didn't deliberately release their cultivation, they didn't hide it either. The pressure on him made him very nervous. Everyone in this room had the ability to kill him with a slap. Deacon Sun, oh no, Elder Sun, actually, we all know you. We've all been to the academy. I'm Lan Ling. I heard that you're very knowledgeable about formations. Can you teach me? We don't know anything about it. Lan Ling said happily. Feng Haochen never talked about formations with them. Everyone guessed that Feng Haochen didn't know about formations either, so he didn't teach them. Old Sun quickly nodded, but he was rendered speechless by the aura of the Jindan period. Lan Ling deliberately hid her own aura first, then kicked Xiang Nan. You're so careless. Would it kill you to hide your Jindan period aura? You can't wait to let everyone know that you've reached the Jindan period, right? You're scaring everyone. Xiang Nan rubbed his foot in pain. I didn't do it on purpose. Usually, Master and Shu and Senior Brother don't deliberately hide it either. Look at those two troublemakers. They're not affected either. Kong Kong suddenly covered his chest and rolled his eyes. Oh, I can't take it anymore. Third Senior Brother's aura during the Jindan period is too strong. I'm going to faint. Third Senior Brother, you've reached the Jindan period? When did you reach it? Why didn't you tell us? Meow Meow tilted her head and asked. Wait, he seemed to have said it a few days ago, Kong Kong said. No, he seemed to have said it a month ago. Meow Meow blinked. He talks about it when he's sleep-talking at night. Ha! Kong Kong and Meow Meow laughed heartlessly. Xiang Nan glared at the two little guys. You can't hear me when I'm sleep-talking. However, he still hid his aura. The others also tacitly did their best to hide their auras, so that Old Sun wouldn't feel so uncomfortable. Thank you. Old Sun was touched. In order not to affect him, these Jindan period cultivators consciously suppressed their auras as low as possible. They didn't put on any airs, as if they treated him as one of their own. This feeling of being cared for made him feel very touched. When he was in the academy, he always received complaints, curses, and reprimands from other cultivators. No one had ever cared about the feelings of a gray disciple. Old Sun thought to himself. Everyone usually said that the Falling Dust sect was a sect at the bottom. Although they didn't have many people, every disciple had such a high cultivation level. They were already a terrifying existence in the entire cultivation world. How could this sect be so simple? Let's eat. And Shu expressionlessly carried a plate of blackened food to the table. It was unknown what it was made of, but it looked like a lump of meat. However, it was rare for it to be burnt to such an extent. He glanced at Old Sun and nodded, which could be considered a greeting. Everyone looked at the terrible food on the table in horror and exchanged glances. They all wanted to cry but had no tears. They really didn't have the mood to eat this kind of food that challenged their taste buds. Muyu also wanted to cry. He thought about going into the forest to hunt a few wild hares to satisfy his hunger. However, the wild animals in the back mountain were getting fewer and fewer. For a long time, the Falling Dust sect disciples went hunting in the back mountain, which seriously damaged the balance of the game. Old Sun, do you know how to cook? Kong Kong whispered to him. Old Sun was stunned for a moment, but he quickly nodded. Yes. From now on I'll cook. I can do all the chores. If there's anything you need, please don't hesitate to tell me. Old Sun knew that he didn't have the right to stay in a sect with so many geniuses. There was no legitimate reason for him to stay. It seemed that being a servant was the right thing to do. No need. You just have to cook for us. We'll do everything else ourselves. Don't call us lords. Just call us by our names. Muyu stretched out his chopsticks and pulled a bunch of ugly-looking vegetables, trying to find a green one, but in the end, he gave up. Looking for green in the vegetables made by Uncle An is like picking a bone in an egg. The difficulty factor is a bit high. If Old Sun doesn't mind, you can help my little brother wash his sheets occasionally. He's still wetting the bed. Meow Meow said with a mischievous smile. Bah, it's clearly you who peed, okay? Kong Kong shouted in dissatisfaction. You were the one who peed yesterday. Meow Meow retorted. The two of them started arguing again, as if there was no one else around. It's okay, it's okay. I'll wash it, I'll wash it. Old Sun looked at the two children in surprise. He didn't understand who was older. Why was one calling the other the younger brother? You'll get used to them. Don't take their words to heart. Muyu recalled that when he first came here, he also didn't understand these two. They were always arguing about who was older and who was younger. Later on, he slowly got used to it. In any case, whoever was older and who was younger than him. Let them fight. After a disastrous meal, everyone left with gritted teeth. Muyu and Lan Ling stayed behind to clean up with Enshu. However, this job was taken over by Old Sun. He insisted on doing it, and the others didn't say anything. There are still some spirit stones left in the spirit gathering array. I brought back 20 of them. Old Sun, can you set up a spirit gathering array at Luochen Cliff? We often go there to cultivate. Muyu took out the purple gold spirit stones. Originally, there were more than 100 purple gold spirit stones. Unfortunately, they were all used up by Muyu. There were only 20 left. Muyu pried out the remaining purple gold spirit stones. Such precious treasures couldn't be wasted. It should be possible. However, the effect won't be that good. I'll go to Luochen Cliff to take a look. After Old Sun took care of the matter, he wiped his hands and dried the water on them. I'll go too. Master didn't teach us how to set up arrays. Maybe he's not familiar with this aspect. I'm also very interested in arrays. Lan Ling rubbed her palms and followed. Why are you joining in instead of cultivating? Muyu said lazily. It's none of your business. Lan Ling rolled her eyes at Muyu. Then, she eagerly asked, Old Sun, how do you know how to set up arrays? Old Sun smiled and said with a bit of sadness, I've always wanted to become a cultivator. However, fate didn't allow me to become a Grey disciple. Actually, being a Grey disciple also has its advantages. All day long, I was ordered around by those cultivators. As a coolie, sometimes I would come in contact with all kinds of books. My cultivation talent is not good, but I have the ability to remember everything I see. I'll remember every book I read. Then, I'll go back and copy it down and study it carefully. I'm the most thorough when it comes to arrays. In fact, I always feel that our cultivation world is enveloped by a huge array. However, I'm not sure about the specifics. You think? What do you mean by being enveloped by a huge array? Muyu asked in surprise. Old Sun revealed a troubled expression. It seemed that he didn't know how to explain all of this. He could only vaguely say, according to my speculation about arrays, the spiritual energy here seems to be suppressed by something. There's also an indescribable force supporting everyone. I used to suspect that the lack of nascent soul cultivators was due to the array. However, since there are 2 nascent soul cultivators, my guess might be wrong. Muyu's eyes widened. Old Sun was actually able to guess to this extent? Was this really something that a Grey disciple could realize? Old Sun's guess wasn't wrong. It was impossible for a nascent soul cultivator to appear in the Moyun mountain range. The Qingsong Taoist and Daoist Zhihua both stepped into the nascent soul stage with the help of others. Old Sun was actually able to sense the existence of the heaven and earth array. This array was called the Immortal Confinement Prison. It locked up the entire Moyun mountain range. Even Muyu just found out about it not long ago. There were probably very few people in the Moyun mountain range who knew that they were trapped in a cage. Old Sun, a Qi refinement cultivator, was actually able to sense the Immortal Confinement Prison. It was really not simple. To be honest, I discovered that your Luochen sect, oh no, our Luochen sect also has an array. This array seems to be able to sense all movements in the entire mountain. I haven't studied the details yet, but the person who set up this array is really powerful. I think it should be your master, Lord Feng, right? Old Sun said. Lan Ling and Mu Yu looked at each other. They were a little confused. What array was there in the Luochen mountain? Why had they never heard their master talk about it? Master has never told us about the Luochen mountain's array. Master also didn't teach us about array knowledge. I don't think he studied array formations. Could you be mistaken? Mu Yu brought Old Sun to Luochen Cliff. Usually, everyone liked to cultivate at Luochen Cliff, so he planned to set up the spirit gathering array here. Old Sun had just stepped into Luochen Cliff when his body suddenly froze. He frowned. You're saying that Lord Fenghouchen has never studied array formations? Impossible. This Luochen Cliff is a spirit gathering array. What? Luochen Cliff is a spirit gathering array? Mu Yu and Lan Ling looked at each other. They didn't quite understand. They had cultivated here for so long and had never noticed any array formations. Their master had also never told them about the existence of array formations. But Old Sun had discovered this array formation as soon as he came? What was going on? I'm not mistaken. The spirit chi at Luochen Cliff is denser than other places. Moreover, this spirit gathering array is of a higher level than the one I set up. The person who set up the array formation probably didn't know any less about array formations than me. Didn't you notice it when you cultivated? Old Sun asked curiously. Chapter 97. Mu Yu had been cultivating on Luochen Mountain for 2 years, but he had never heard of a formation on Luochen Mountain. He also didn't know that Luochen Cliff was a spirit-gathering formation. Perhaps no one else knew about this. If that was the case, then the fast cultivation speed of every disciple of the Falling Dust sect could be explained. Although it had something to do with talent, no matter how high one's talent was, if the surrounding spiritual energy was too thin, the rate at which a cultivator could refine and convert it would slow down, and their cultivation would naturally not rise as quickly. Every disciple of the Luochen sect had the best talent. Coupled with a spirit-gathering formation, they could quickly raise their cultivation to the next level. This seemed to be Fenghouchen's intention, but why didn't he mention the formation? Elder Sun, look again. Where else are the formations set up? Mu Yu and Lan Ling were skeptical. The two of them took Elder Sun and flew all over Luochen Mountain, letting Elder Sun search for places with formations. The two of them didn't know anything about formations and couldn't tell if there was a formation or not. They couldn't be sure if Elder Sun was telling the truth. Elder Sun pointed out a total of 4 places to set up the spirit-gathering formation. The first was the Cliff of Falling Dust, which was also the place where everyone cultivated the most. The second was the open space where everyone usually practiced their swordsmanship. Fenghouchen often asked them to practice their swordsmanship there. The third was a rock halfway up the mountain, where everyone would sit and chat whenever they had nothing to do. The last was the waterfall at the foot of the mountain, where everyone cultivated the falling dust cultivation method. These 4 places could be said to be places that everyone usually went to, but Elder Sun had pointed them out. Mu Yu and Lan Ling began to believe Elder Sun's words because only they knew what these 4 places meant. Elder Sun had just arrived, so he couldn't know where everyone usually cultivated. They had brought Elder Sun to many places, but Elder Sun had only pointed out these 4 places. This couldn't be a coincidence. That means Master set up a spirit-gathering formation long ago to provide a good environment for us to cultivate and increase our cultivation speed. But Master didn't tell us about this and only told us to cultivate in these places. What's going on? Everyone usually followed their Master's instructions and went to cultivate wherever they wanted. With Enshu's supervision, they didn't think too much about it and just thought that they were cultivating diligently. Now that Elder Sun had pointed this out, Mu Yu found it a little inconceivable. Their fast cultivation speed was actually aided by external forces. If news of this were to spread to the other sects in the cultivation world, the falling dust sect would have long become a possession of the other sections. Why did Master set up the spirit gathering array behind our backs? Lan Ling had always thought that her master did not teach them formations because he was not familiar with formations. But in reality, her master's understanding of formations was quite profound. It was not that he was unfamiliar with them, but that he had hidden it deeply, just like how he had hidden his own past. Their previously amiable master seemed to have become more and more unfamiliar. Master knew each and every one of them like the back of his hand, but they didn't know the other side of Master at all. Mu Yu shook his head. It's not necessarily a formation set up by Master. Maybe Master just happened to discover the spirit gathering formation hidden in this mountain, so he established a sect here. No, it can't be a coincidence. The spirit gathering array needs to be repaired regularly, about once a month. It's impossible for someone who isn't familiar with formations to complete the maintenance. I feel that these formations haven't been repaired for at least 2 months. The spirit energy it gathers is a little unstable. Elder Sun moved a rock and looked at the situation under the rock. Then, he dug out a spirit stone that was completely depleted of spirit energy. 2 months ago just happened to be when Master went missing. Mu Yu no longer doubted Elder Sun's words. These 4 formations definitely had something to do with Master. Even now, Elder Sun still didn't know about Feng Haochen's disappearance. He guessed that the spirit gathering array's lack of maintenance coincided with Master's absence from Falling Dust Mountain. This also meant that Master was usually the one secretly maintaining the spirit gathering array. Master knew about formations, but for some reason, he didn't teach it to his disciples. Was he hiding it for himself? If Lan Ling, and Mu Yu didn't know that Master wasn't the kind of person who would purposely hide things, they might have really thought so. Wasn't it better to teach something like formations to his disciples? Why did he have to hold back? Was there something he was worried about? Master secretly built a spirit gathering array for them to help them cultivate faster, but he didn't tell them about the existence of the spirit gathering array. This was really puzzling. Then, Elder Sun, can you repair and maintain it? Mu Yu asked. I'll give it a try first. It should be fine. Elder Sun walked back and forth on the rock halfway up the mountain. He moved a few stones here and there, brushed away a few blades of grass there. He looked at the sun again and determined the direction. Then, he walked 4 steps to the left and 8 steps back. His strange actions stunned Mu Yu and Lan Ling. This spirit gathering array uses ordinary spirit stones, and the method used to set it up is much better than mine. No wonder you guys didn't feel the difference between the spirit energy and other places. Only when you guys are cultivating and drawing in the spirit energy around you will the spirit energy from the spirit gathering array gather. Elder Sun dug out a few more spirit stones from the ground. These spirit stones were the size of a fist. It was really unexpected that they were usually buried in the ground, and Mu Yu and the others didn't notice them at all. Ordinary spirit stones aren't as useful as purple gold spirit stones, but with the help of this array, you can achieve twice the effect with half the effort. I roughly calculated that maintaining this array formation would cost 500 spirit stones per month. The array formation at Luochun Cliff is relatively large, so it requires 1,000 spirit stones. Luochun Mountain has 4 arrays, so it would cost 2,500 spirit stones per month. In other words, heavens! Elder Sun suddenly couldn't continue. The Luochun sect had always been known to be poor in the outside world. Thinking about it, how rich could a sect with only 4 or 5 disciples be? They didn't have a way to get spirit stones, so they were definitely poor. However, these spirit gathering arrays cost 2,500 spirit stones a month. Where did the poor Luochun sect get so many spirit stones? Spirit stones were the currency in the cultivation world. For an ordinary sect, it was already good enough to get 1,000 spirit stones a month. Every sect disciple had to contribute to the sect if they wanted to get spirit stones. Either they had to mine spirit stones themselves, or they had to hunt and trade spirit stones. Mining spirit stones was really too difficult. Some spirit stone mines didn't even produce 2,000 spirit stones a year. Moreover, the number of spirit stone mines was limited. The good ones were all controlled by the two big sects, Qingsong School and Zhihua School. The other smaller sects only had small spirit stone mines, which weren't even enough to fill the gaps between their teeth. Therefore, many people preferred to hunt demonic beasts in exchange for spirit stones. Although hunting demonic beasts was very risky, and one could become a demonic beast's picnic if they weren't careful, if they hunted a decent demonic beast, they could sell it for a good price. There was no need to doubt the benefits of spirit stones. The spirit energy contained in spirit stones could be directly absorbed by cultivators, but most cultivators wouldn't choose to absorb it directly. If you could absorb spirit energy from heaven and earth, why would you absorb it from spirit stones? Spirit stones could be used to trade for more materials to refine magic treasures and herbs. 2,500 spirit stones? Can you really take out that many spirit stones? Elder Sun was shocked beyond words. Spending 2,500 spirit stones a month. Even Qingsong School wasn't that extravagant. Although Qingsong School was extremely wealthy and its disciples didn't lack spirit stones for cultivation, the number of spirit stones they had was limited. Even a place as rich as Qingsong School couldn't afford to spend 2,000 spirit stones a month on its disciples. Mu Yu didn't expect that the place where he cultivated for so many years would have thousands of spirit stones hidden in it. As the beneficiaries, they didn't know about it at all. He was speechless. Mu Yu reached into the Qianquan bag in his sleeve. He only had 3 ordinary spirit stones on him, so he was extremely poor. The others definitely didn't have more than 10 spirit stones on them. Master would often leave spirit stones in the hall for anyone who wanted to take them. But basically, no one would take them when they went down the mountain. They would hunt demonic beasts for spirit stones. It turned out that their master had always been a tycoon, and they were all second-generation rich kids. But they were so poor that they didn't even want to waste time on the disciples of the Falling Dust sect. Because they were too poor, the robbers felt that the gains didn't make up for the losses. Mu Yu glanced at Lan Ling. They immediately figured it out. Master used to be the famous sword Shadow Dustwind in the cultivation world. He used to be so powerful, so he should have countless spirit stones on him, right? Unfortunately, Master had always been indifferent and didn't show off his wealth. If Elder Sun hadn't pointed it out, they probably would have overlooked this point. Master is so rich, but we're still so poor. I have to save up for a long time just to buy some skincare pills. Lan Ling didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Girls all like to look good, but she didn't dare to go to the city to buy expensive skincare products. Master spends 2,500 spirit stones a month on us. Isn't that enough? If he wants us to squander them, no matter how much money we have, we won't have enough. Mu Yu was very calm. No matter what Master did, he had his own intentions. Mu Yu never doubted his master. He never did things without thinking. Maybe Master is afraid that if he gives us all the spirit stones, we won't be able to make progress. It's even more likely that we'll be targeted by people with ulterior motives. When that happens, people like the red-robed youth will come knocking on our door more easily. Master had always kept a low profile. He didn't want to attract the attention of the outside world. This was also why he hid the spirit stones. It was also why he didn't teach others about array formations. Master didn't want to explain why he had so many spirit stones, nor did he want people to know about his past. Someone once asked, "What was your biggest wish when you were poor?" The answer was, "My biggest wish is that when I'm poor, my father will find me and tell me that he's actually a billionaire." All these years were just to train me. Mu Yu and the others were people who were being trained. Suddenly, happiness enveloped them. But a new problem arose. Where were they going to get the spirit stones to repair the spirit gathering array? Chapter 98. The 20 purple gold spirit stones that Mu Yu had brought back could finally be put to good use. Elder Sun had cleverly set up a formation within a formation and gathered all the spirit stones needed for the spirit gathering formation into a purple gold spirit stone. According to Elder Sun's estimation, this purple gold spirit stone could be used for at least a year. I have 20 purple gold spirit stones. Doesn't that mean I can use them for several years? Mu Yu exclaimed. He then remembered that he had used up all the other purple gold spirit stones and felt a little embarrassed. Elder Sun replaced the spirit stones that had turned into normal stones with purple gold spirit stones and stood up. He had been busy for the entire afternoon and had finally finished modifying the 4 formations. He said, "That's it for now. Give me a few more days and I can use 2 purple gold spirit stones to modify this spirit gathering formation. This way the effects will be doubled." Then what did you say about our Luochen mountain having a mountain protecting formation? Lan Ling had been asking all sorts of questions the entire afternoon. Mu Yu had never known that she was so interested in formations. Elder Sun pondered for a moment and said, "The Luochen Mountains formation is very advanced. I've never seen it before. However, I speculate that this formation locks the spiritual energy from the outside world onto this mountain, making the spiritual energy on this mountain more concentrated. It's similar to a spirit gathering formation, but much more advanced. If you can control this formation, you can even observe the movements of everyone on this mountain. You can also use this formation to prevent outsiders from entering and use this formation to attack everyone on the mountain." It's that powerful? Mu Yu's mouth was wide open. Master had secretly set up such a powerful and secretive formation? Didn't that mean that anyone who slacked off during cultivation couldn't escape Master's eyes? Then doesn't this formation require even more spirit stones? Lan Ling also felt that it was inconceivable. A small place like this required 500 spirit stones. The Luochen Mountains formation was so big, so wouldn't it require 100,000 spirit stones? This formation is very strange. It doesn't seem to use spirit stones as the formation base. Instead, it seems to use something else as the formation base. It might be a magic treasure, but I'm not too sure. If it was set up by the sect master, his understanding of formations far surpasses mine. Elder Sun sighed. A magic treasure? What kind of magic treasure could support a protective mountain array? Elder Sun, I remember that Jiahua School also has a mountain protecting formation. Could it be that they also have some powerful magical weapons? When Mu Yu had tried to sneak into the Jiahua School, he had triggered the protective mountain array and had been discovered by someone, so he had no choice but to leave. Elder Sun shook his head. I've been to Jiahua School a few times. That formation is just a simple warning formation. It doesn't have any offensive capabilities, and it can't gather spiritual energy either. When someone did not enter in the correct way, the alarm would be triggered. That array formation only costs a few hundred spirit stones a month. It doesn't need too much. It's the same as the array formations in every courtyard of the academy. Every courtyard in the academy was equipped with a formation, and one had to use a specific method to enter. Otherwise, it would emit a buzzing sound. The Falling Dust faction's side courtyard also had this array formation, so Mu Yu and the others knew how to enter. Mu Yu still wanted to ask something, but at this moment, Elder Sun suddenly gasped for breath. His entire body was trembling, and his face was filled with pain. Both of his hands were tightly clutching his chest. Elder Sun, what's wrong? Mu Yu hurriedly asked. Massacre, massacre, I haven't eaten for days. Elder Sun painfully twitched on the ground. His eyes were red, and the joints in his body were protruding out of shape. It was a little scary. The soul-devouring wolf in Elder Sun's body is acting up. Go find and shoo. He said that he has a way to suppress it, Mu Yu said to Lan Ling. Lan Ling nodded, and her figure flashed out. Not long after, she returned with Enshu. Enshu, what should we do? Mu Yu anxiously asked. For the past 2 days, he had been treating Elder Sun's injuries, removing the hidden injuries in his body. Because Elder Sun had consumed the soul-devouring wolf's demon spirit, his body was recovering very quickly. However, he still couldn't suppress the soul-devouring wolf's wolfish nature. And Shu expressionlessly took out a black stalk of grass, crushed it into powder, and stuffed it into Elder Sun's mouth. Mu Yu knew about this black stalk of grass. It's called wolf venom grass, and it's something that his master usually grows in his herb garden. His master would plant all kinds of herbs for them to bathe in. Normally, no one would care about these herbs. Wolf venom grass is the nemesis of wolf-type demon beasts. It can suppress the soul-devouring wolf's wolfish nature. The sect master has planted some, and from now on, he'll just have to consume 1 stalk every 7 days, and Shu calmly said. Elder Sun's face gradually relaxed, and his chest gradually stabilized. The red light in his eyes also dissipated. After a while, he sat up and said, Thank you, Lord, and the sect master didn't plant a lot of wolf venom grass. Mu Yu, think of a way to deal with it. And Shu meaningfully looked at Mu Yu, causing Mu Yu to feel uncomfortable. And Shu's words meant that he knew about Mu Yu's ability to control wood. If you want to find something, you have to use the same kind of thing as the formation guide, Elder Sun said seriously. Old Sun said solemnly, in other words, if you want to find someone, you need someone to act as the array guide. The dragon-seeking formation is used outside the formation. Its range of effect is determined by the quality of the formation guide. If you want to find someone, then the person who is the formation guide needs to have a very strong willpower. Otherwise, you can only search a very narrow range, such as a radius of 1 mile. If that's the case, you might as well look for it yourself. I can be the formation guide, and Shu said. If the dragon-seeking formation is used to find someone, then the person who is the formation guide is very dangerous. The slightest mistake or disturbance will cause the formation guide to be destroyed. In other words, the person who is the formation guide will die and their soul will scatter. Elder Sun looked at Enshu seriously. Mu Yu and Lan Ling's expressions changed. Only Enshu was still expressionless. I'm willing to take this risk, Enshu said. Enshu was very strict with everyone. He had a strange temper and was not close to people. Only when he was facing the sect leader would he be slightly like a normal person. No one knew about Enshu's past. They only knew that Enshu had always been obedient and respectful to the sect leader. Ever since the sect leader went missing, he became even more taciturn. He stubbornly believed that the sect leader's disappearance was his fault. Elder Sun, how confident are you? Mu Yu asked. The materials for the dragon-seeking formation are very complicated. The formation foundation can't be spirit stones. There must be 5 things. 10,000-year evergreen wood, black sea ice, ancient spirit fire, meteoric iron, and frozen rock. Everyone knows that these 5 things are extraordinary. It's said that the dragon-seeking formation was created by the 5 elements Yuman, so the materials are inseparable from the 5 elements rare treasures, Elder Sun said. Mu Yu had never even heard of these 5 things, let alone seen them. Mu Yu didn't even know what 10,000-year evergreen wood was, let alone the others. How do we find these things? Lan Ling didn't understand at all. Elder Sun shook his head and said helplessly, I haven't seen them either. And Shu was silent for a long time. Then, he said, I have all the materials. You just need to help me set up the formation. What? You have all these materials? Elder Sun was in disbelief. He had only heard about the dragon-seeking formation from ancient books. He didn't know what these materials were, but Enshu actually said that he had all of them. Was he joking? Don't worry about it. I will prepare all the materials for you. I will come find you in 2 days, Enshu said succinctly. Then, he turned and left Luochen Cliff. Muyu felt strange. 10,000-year evergreen wood, black sea ice, ancient spirit fire, meteoric iron, and frozen rock. These things sounded very hard to get. How did Enshu have them? Enshu's origin was as mysterious as his master's. Everyone only knew that he was serious and loyal to the sect leader. Other than his terrible cooking skills, they didn't know much about him. Muyu helped Elder Sun to rest. He left the room with Lan Ling. However, he was thinking about the dragon-seeking formation. If this dragon-seeking formation could help find his master's whereabouts, he was willing to take the risk and become the formation guide. However, Enshu definitely wouldn't agree. He was such a stubborn person. He would definitely do it himself. Ling I didn't know you were so interested in formations. Muyu said casually. Interested your head? Lan Ling said for no reason. Muyu was a little confused. If you're not interested, why did you follow us around in the afternoon? Lan Ling snorted. It's all because of you. You casually brought someone back and wanted him to join our sect. Do you really think we will accept him? Muyu was stunned. He thought he had convinced everyone, but Lan Ling seemed to be worried about something. He killed so many people. Although those people went too far, they didn't deserve to die. I don't care about that. I'm mainly worried about the soul-devouring wolf in his body. I'm not worried that he will turn into a soul-devouring wolf and attack you or me. However, have you considered Kong Kong and Meow Meow, who don't know anything about the world? They don't have any cultivation. If Elder Sun loses control and attacks them, what will happen to them? Lan Ling asked. Muyu was speechless. He had indeed been too rash in doing this. He had not considered this point. Only he knew that Elder Sun wouldn't kill people indiscriminately even if he turned into a soul-devouring wolf. The others didn't know. They only temporarily agreed to Mu Yu's request because Elder Sun helped Mu Yu improve his cultivation. It didn't mean that they truly trusted Elder Sun. However, I don't think Elder Sun is a bad person. He used to be a deacon of the academy. He's humble, which is good. I followed you around in the afternoon just to understand him. I didn't expect to find a formation that even we didn't know about. He's really not simple. Lan Ling approved of Elder Sun staying. Master has too many secrets. He never told us, but we found out so much. I don't know if he'll be unhappy, Lan Ling continued. Chapter 99. Many sects in the world of cultivation had already been forced to make a choice and pledge their allegiance to either the Qingsong Alliance or the Zhuhua Alliance. Only the most inconspicuous sect, the Falling Dust sect, had yet to make a decision. Logically speaking, a sect with less than 10 people was dispensable. Even if they chose to pledge their allegiance, it wouldn't be a big deal. What they wanted was the loyalty of a big sect like the Wuan sect. However, the Qingsong school and the Zhuhua school didn't let the Falling Dust sect go. When a person reached the foundation establishment stage at the age of 15, it could be considered unorthodox. However, reaching the Jindan period at the age of 20 wasn't something that could be explained by unorthodox method. The genius of the Zhuhua school, Zhu Wenxing, came to the appointment. After being rejected by Qingyan last time, he was slightly angry, but he didn't express it. According to Qingyan, he would come again in 10 days. When they landed on the empty ground halfway up the mountain, the people of the Falling Dust sect were already waiting there. And Shu was a man of few words, so Qingyan received him. Brother Qingyan, 10 days have passed. What's your decision? Zhu Wenxing cupped his hands. He brought 2 elders with him today, a man and a woman. The man had a sinister face and looked to be in his 70s or 80s. His head was bald and his beard was almost gone. His name was Daoist Qi Yen and his cultivation was at the 5th level of the Golden Core stage. The woman looked to be in her 40s. She was the elder of the Qiantian school, Reverend Boa. Her cultivation was at the 1st level of the Golden Core stage, and it seemed that she had already pledged her allegiance to the Zhihua school. When Qingyan saw Reverend Boa, he smiled. The Reverend Boa of the Qiantian school has graced my humble abode. What a surprise! He had seen Reverend Boa when he went to the Qiantian school with his master to meet Boyang Daoren. Seeing Reverend Boa here, he knew that the Qiantian school had changed its name to Zhihua school. Qiantian school is now working for Zhihua school. Why doesn't your falling dust sect know your place? At this moment, Qingyan was still restraining his aura, making him look ordinary. Reverend Boa did not put Qingyan in her eyes at all. She was very dissatisfied with the relationship between her senior brother, Boyang Daoren, and the Luochen sect. She believed that it was her senior brother's lack of ambition that caused the Qiantian school to stagnate. Now that she had joined Zhihua school, she was even more disdainful of the falling dust sect. Now that she was an elder of Zhihua school, what was a small sect to her? Qingsong Taoist and Zhihua Taoist think so highly of my small falling dust sect. I'm really flattered. To be honest, my disciples are divided. Some are willing to join Zhihua school, while others are willing to join Qingsong school. It would be great if my fellow Taoists from Zhihua school could persuade them. Qingyan glanced at Mu Yu and the others. Kong Kong and Miao Miao were sitting on a rock in the distance, munching on sunflower seeds. They were hugging some fruits in their arms as they pointed and whispered to each other. He did not know what they were talking about. Mu Yu sat next to them and interjected from time to time. Xiang Nan yawned and scratched his ear. And Shu had not been seen since yesterday. Lan Ling had something to do on the mountain just now. Persuasion? Easy. Will that do? Daoist 7 Birds, who was behind Zhu Wenxing, sneered and stepped forward. His cultivation at the 5th layer of the Golden Core realm suddenly condensed into a sharp aura that swept towards Qingyan. Zhu Wenxing had been rejected when he tried to persuade him last time. This time, he brought these 2 with him because he wanted to use force to subdue the falling dust sect. Therefore, Daoist 7 Birds did not hesitate to use force. Qingyan was still smiling faintly. His expression did not change. He only looked at Daoist 7 Birds patiently, as if he was curious about the meaning behind Daoist 7 Birds' words. He stood there quietly, not even ruffling the hem of his clothes. Daoist 7 Birds frowned. His aura at the 5th layer of the Golden Core realm was actually useless against Qingyan? His opponent stood there calmly. When his aura covered him, it was as if his aura had sunk into the ocean. This surprised him. He snorted coldly again and directed his aura towards the 4 people sitting on a rock and munching on sunflower seeds. If it was ineffective against Qingyan, those little brats would be scared shitless. The 4 of them continued to discuss heatedly in the distance as if there was no one else around. Mu Yu seemed to be carelessly grabbing Xiang Nan's empty hand, while Xiang Nan absent-mindedly placed his hand on Miao Miao's shoulder. Neither of them even bothered to lift their eyelids. When they were at the foundation establishment stage, Anshu had always used his aura during the Jindan period to intimidate them. Over time, they had gotten used to it. Now that the 2 of them had reached the Jindan period, how could this level of aura affect them? Daoist 7 Birds' expression changed slightly. He pursed his lips, his expression uncertain. Ordinary cultivators, even those at the foundation establishment stage, would tremble in fear under the aura of the 5th layer of the Golden Core realm, let alone those at the Qi refinement stage. However, these 4 youths were sitting there chatting and laughing without being affected. Was there something wrong? I didn't expect Senior Seven Birds to be here today. What a surprise. Junior Bailiang greets you. A burst of hearty laughter came from the sky. Bailiang's figure landed. The people from Chingsong School had also arrived. Senior Seven Birds, it's not proper for the strong to oppress the weak. Nephew Bailiang, Chingsong School, has mobilized a lot of people to catch the murderer. You've really surprised me by taking the time to come here, Taoist Seven Birds said with a fake smile. Little Tiger's death had caused a stir in the cultivation world. Everyone knew that Chingsong School was trying to catch the murderer. Senior, you must be joking. Our master loves talents and specially sent us here to form good karma with the Falling Dust sect so that in the future we can help fight Yaman, right? Bailiang said with a smile. He wasn't angry at Taoist Seven Birds' mention of Little Tiger. Good karma? Brother Bailiang, what do you mean? Zhu Wenxing asked. Someone walked out from behind Bailiang. When this person appeared, Zhu Wenxing and the others were surprised. Even Qingyan was slightly taken aback. This person was the apple of the Chingsong Taoists' eye, Qing Mei. The people from Zhihua School naturally knew who she was. The moment Qingyan saw Qing Mei, he sighed inwardly. He hadn't expected to see Qing Mei here. Ever since the incident at Mount Fulong, no one knew what had happened between him and Qing Mei. Mu Yu guessed that he had heartlessly cut off this relationship. He could guess this from Qingyan's awkward expression. Little sister, I'll bet you a meal. There's something wrong between senior brother and that woman. Little brother, if you bet and choose meal with me, then I admit defeat. Kong Kong and Meow Meow sat at the side and discussed quietly. They tossed the shells of the sunflower seeds aside, picked up an apple, and ate it happily. Mu Yu saw Qingyan hesitating. He knew that the Chingsong School had sent Qing Mei here because they knew about the relationship between Qing Mei and Qingyan. Was the Chingsong Taoist really willing to use his daughter as a means to subdue the Luochen sect? The Chingsong School has used their trump card. They're trying to stir up trouble. I think Qing Mei is here to force senior brother to submit. Kong Kong, increase the stakes. I'll bet my meal as well. In reality, Mu Yu wasn't opposed to Qingyan and Qing Mei being together. However, the red-clothed young man behind the Chingsong Taoist had ill intentions. The Chingsong Taoist was already under his control, so he didn't want his master to be targeted by the red-clothed young man. I've already told my father about our relationship. He also knows about your cultivation and agrees to us being together. As long as your master agrees, no one can stop us, Qing Mei said softly. Her eyes were like water as she looked at Qingyan calmly. Perhaps Qingyan was too cruel that day, but she couldn't bear to part with him. Qingyan was startled and turned his face away. At this moment, he wasn't in the mood to talk about this. His master was already gone, and the red-clothed young man was glaring at them from behind. If he agreed, he might harm the two of them. So senior brother's heart already belongs to someone. What a pity. I was still thinking of marrying senior brother when I grew up. Meow Meow shook her head regretfully. Mu Yu was speechless. This girl didn't know anything and was thinking about such nonsense. However, when he thought of his unclear feelings for Lan Linger, he realized that he didn't seem to know much more than Meow Meow. The fight hasn't started yet? That's great. I'm not late. Lan Ling-er's figure suddenly landed beside Mu Yu. She patted Mu Yu and Xiang Nan's shoulders and said with great interest. Mu Yu smiled bitterly. Lan Ling-er often liked to scare him, and he was used to it. Looking at the relationship between Qingyan and Qing Mei, he thought of his feelings for Lan Ling. He was originally quite depressed and wanted to say something nice to Lan Ling-er, but the first thing he said was, "Why are you always so impetuous? Can't you be more ladylike?" He just couldn't change his bad habit of bickering with Lan Ling. When I'm ladylike, I'm even afraid of myself. Forget it. Lan Ling-er stretched her hand forward and took an apple from Kong Kong. Although Qingsong School and Zhihua School had already forced their way to their door, they weren't worried about this. No matter which sect they joined, they wouldn't be at a disadvantage. Now that they had the ability to protect themselves in the Moyen mountain range, it was too difficult for those two sects to really make them submit. This group of onlookers just wanted to see how Qingsong School and Zhihua School would go head-to-head. Daoist Qingyan, your talent is outstanding and your aptitude is extraordinary. My master knows about your relationship with junior sister and greatly approves of the two of you being together. If the two of you get married, won't you become in-laws in the future? Bai Liang said with a smile. Brother Bai Liang, I'm afraid it's not very appropriate for you to force Daoist Qingsong to do this, right? Zhu Wenxing's expression was a little ugly. He had also come under the orders of perfected Zhihua to recruit the disciples of the Dustfall sect. He had never understood why his master valued the people of the Dustfall sect so much and even ordered them to be brought back. Having Daoist Seven Birds and Reverend Boa come together was to use both the carrot and the stick to intimidate the other party. Zhu Wenxing hadn't expected Bai Liang to come today. Moreover, Qing may seem to have an unusual relationship with Qingyan, which really infuriated him. The fact that the Qingsong Taoist was willing to use his daughter as a bargaining chip to recruit the Dustfall sect was enough to show how much importance the Qingsong Taoist attached to the Dustfall sect. What was so special about the Dustfall sect that two nascent soul cultivators were fighting over? What's wrong with a talented man and a beautiful woman? Bai Liang said with a smile, then turned to Qingyan. Brother Qingyan, what do you think? Chapter 100. Zhu Wenxing put away his fake smile and glared at Qingyan. Now that the world situation is settled, I've already given you a lot of face by tolerating you. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Brother Qingyan, junior sister is deeply in love with you. If you join Qingsong School, you'll definitely have a bright future. My master, the Qingsong Taoist, will naturally think more highly of you. If you have any other concerns, feel free to tell me. If I can do it, I'll do my best. Bai Liang was different from Zhu Wenxing. Before he came, the Qingsong Taoist had instructed him to bring the disciples of the Falling Dust sect back. Although he didn't understand his master's intentions, he still did as he was told. Qingyan shook his head. No matter what choice I make, I'll definitely offend the other side. My master has been in seclusion for many days and has temporarily handed over the sect to me. Naturally, I have to think for junior brother and junior sister. I don't want my junior brother and junior sister to be targeted by others. That's not something I want to see. Then Brother Qingyan, what do you mean? Bai Liang asked. Between Qingsong School and Zhihua School, which is stronger and which is weaker? I still can't tell. Why don't you just tell me so that we can dispel this concern? Mu Yu walked over and said with a smile. Impudent, ignorant brat, this is no place for you to speak. Daoist Seven Birds didn't recognize Mu Yu and thought that Mu Yu was just a chi-refining rookie, so he berated him. Mu Yu didn't think much of it. Why can't I speak for my sect? Your sect? Soon this will be our territory. Daoist Seven Birds narrowed his eyes darkly. So that means your Zhihua School is stronger than Qingsong School? Mu Yu asked, feigning ignorance. Do you still need me to explain such an obvious reason? Zhu Wenxing's mouth revealed a trace of mockery as he glanced at Bai Liang. Bai Liang knew that Mu Yu was trying to sow discord between the two schools. However, if he didn't fight at this time, it would encourage Zhu Wenxing's arrogance and damage the reputation of Qingsong School. Therefore, he said, Qingsong School used to be the head of the cultivation world, and it will be in the future. Qingsong Taoist's most beloved disciple has been killed, and the murderer still hasn't been caught after so many days. The Qingsong Taoist's position as the world's chief is truly worthy of his name. Zhu Wenxing opened his fan and gently fanned himself with a mocking expression. Bai Liang said with a smile, "Could it be that Jinren Jiuhua has also caught the murderer of his disciples? My master is very busy every day. How could he have the time to care about the affairs of the younger generation?" Zhu Wenxing said. "It turns out that Jinren Jiuhua's attitude towards his disciples is so careless. This is really disappointing," Bai Liang said. "Humph. I'm afraid that the lives of my junior brothers from Jiuhua School are not as important as Xiaohu's life, right?" Zhu Wenxing sneered. "Idiot. My Qingsong school treats all disciples equally. Therefore, Xiaohu's life is the same as the lives of all Qingsong school's disciples. If anyone harms my Qingsong school's disciples, I will investigate to the end. If you think that the lives of your junior brothers are not as important as Xiaohu's, then are they not as important as all the disciples of my Qingsong school? Is there a need to continue talking about who is stronger and who is weaker?" Bai Liang spoke in an orderly manner. There was naturally a reason why he was called the leader of the younger generation in the cultivation world. Zhu Wenxing was annoyed. In terms of cultivation talent, he was slightly inferior to Bai Liang. In terms of eloquence, he was not as good as Bai Liang. "I wonder if Brother Qingyan and little brother Mu Yu have already figured it out?" Bai Liang asked gently. Qingyan and Mu Yu looked at each other. In fact, they were planning to join Jiuhua School because Mu Yu wanted to sneak into the Jiuhua School to find his master's whereabouts. However, the people of Jiuhua School were much inferior to those of Qingsong School. Qingyan helplessly cupped his hands and said, "Thank you for your kindness. We don't want to join any school." And Shu's figure slowly appeared beside Qingyan, interrupting him. Qingyan looked at Shu in confusion. And Shu's gaze revealed a hint of determination. Mu Yu was also confused. And Shu had disappeared yesterday, and he didn't know where he came from today. When everyone was discussing this, he had also agreed to join Jiuhua School. So why did he change his mind at the last minute? Are you really going to refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit? Zhu Wenxing's eyes revealed a hint of ferocity. You can try. And Shu's face was expressionless. His meaning was written in his eyes. Bai Liang, the falling dust sect doesn't know how to appreciate kindness. Does your school want to take action? Zhu Wenxing looked at Bai Liang. Brother Qingyan, is this what you want as well? Bai Liang stopped smiling. Qingyan glanced at Qing Mei and felt a sense of loss. And Shu's decision was more important than his, so he could only nod. Bai Liang's face revealed a hint of regret. I tolerated you guys for junior sister's sake. Junior sister begged me not to do anything to you guys. I also wanted to fulfill her wish and help you guys. But since you guys don't appreciate it, then Qingsong School won't interfere in this matter. Your Jiuhua School can do as you see fit. Senior brother. Qing Mei was anxious. Previously, she had hoped that the Falling Dust sect could peacefully merge with the Pine Tree sect. That way, the matter between her and Qing Yan would be a matter of course. However, she had not expected things to develop like this. Junior sister, I've already done my best. You should give up. Bai Liang pulled Qing Mei to the side. That's good. Last month, I used my iron fist to subdue half of the sections. Some would rather die than submit, so I forcefully subdued them. As expected, you guys are going to use force today. Zhu Wenxing gazed at the members of the Dustfall sect. He hated wasting his breath with others, and if it wasn't for Adept Jiuhua's orders, he would have attacked a long time ago. However, it still wasn't too late. All of you, come out. Zhu Wenxing waved his hand. Rays of light streaked across the sky. Suddenly, 30 figures appeared. These 30 people all flew on their sword. The spiritual power on their bodies was dense. They were all Jindan period cultivators. He had only seen so many Golden Core realm cultivators when the Pine Tree sect gathered. However, these people were all unfamiliar faces. They were undoubtedly the elders of the Johua sect who had been hiding for a long time. Who would have thought that Johua school would be so bold? They came prepared. These 30 people plus Zhu Wenxing and the other two made a total of 33 Jindan period cultivators gathered in one sect. It was already rare for a normal sect to have 10 Jindan period cultivators. But in front of 33 people, which sect dared to resist? An enormous pressure spread out, enveloping everyone. 33 Jindan period cultivators appeared at the same time. Majestic waves of spiritual energy crashed into the falling dust sect's mountain gate like stormy waves. Everyone had already taken out their magical weapons. They were just waiting for Zhu Wenxing's order to unleash their attacks on every falling dust sect disciple. You guys really won't surrender? Zhu Wenxing asked again. We just want to stay out of this. Qingyan and Shu were still looking at Zhu Wenxing. Mu Yu, Lan Ling and Xiangnan stood up. Their courage was commendable, seeing so many Jindan period cultivators without any change in expression. As for the two troublemakers, they had long since disappeared when they saw that the situation was bad. You should remember Boyang Daoren from Qiantian School, right? I heard that he's on good terms with your falling dust sect. Bring him here. Zhu Wenxing scolded. An old man with messy hair was thrown at Zhu Wenxing's feet. His entire body was stained with blood, and there were several shocking wounds on his face. His clothes were tattered, and his aura was weak. He had suffered a great deal of torture. This person was Boyang Daoren from Qiantian School. The most shocking thing was that Boyang Daoren's left arm had been chopped off at the shoulder. The wound hadn't healed yet and the snow-white bone was still visible. As the head of Qiantian School, he had ended up like this. He wanted to stay out of this, so he ended up like this. I chopped off his arm to teach him a lesson. Zhu Wenxing stepped on Boyang Daoren's chest, causing Boyang Daoren to spit out another mouthful of blood. His expression was sorrowful. He didn't want to care about who the Qiantian School belonged to anymore. He just wanted to protect the ancestral hall of his ancestors. He didn't expect Zhu Wenxing to be so vicious as to raze the ancestral hall of the Qiantian School to the ground. Zhu Wenxing even humiliated and tortured the head of the Qiantian School in every possible way in front of the Qiantian School's disciples. He even chopped off his left arm as a warning to others. When the Qiantian School's disciples saw that their head was in such a miserable state, how could they still have the will to resist? Bastard! Mu Yu looked at Boyang Daoren. The thin old man from the past was now in such a miserable state. When all the other sects were avoiding the falling dust sect, Boyang Daoren was the only one who walked over. He had ended up in this state because he refused to submit to the Johua school. Unfortunately, he wasn't a match for the colossus that was the Johua school and had been tortured to this state. Reverend Boa, can you really watch your senior brother Boyang Daoren get trampled on like this? Mu Yu looked at Reverend Boa, who was behind Zhu Wenxing, in a low voice. Reverend Boa's gaze lingered on Boyang Daoren for a moment before she looked away. She said coldly, I'm a member of the Johua school. I won't object to young Master Wenxing's actions. Since ancient times the winner takes all. Senior brother didn't know how to appreciate favors, so he only has himself to blame. Young master? Haha, how awe-inspiring. I respectfully addressed you as Reverend Boa because of Boyang Daoren, but now you've betrayed your master and ancestors. You've even disregarded your relationship with your sect for the sake of sucking up to others. How shameless! You shameless old nun, Mu Yu scolded. Bastard brat, I don't need you to comment on how I do things. See if I don't teach you a lesson. Reverend Boa's sword flashed and stabbed at Mu Yu. Mu Yu's gaze turned cold. He released his cultivation during the Jindan period without holding back. His shadow clone sword appeared with a flash of green light. He stabbed out and scattered Reverend Boa's flying sword. Then, he slapped her face and kicked her away. First firmament of golden core against first firmament of golden core. Mu Yu won completely. Reverend Boa was sent flying. She was too careless, thinking that Mu Yu was only at the qi refining stage. She didn't expect him to be hiding his true strength. Mu Yu didn't show any mercy and defeated her in one move. He even slapped Reverend Boa heavily. This was a great humiliation to Reverend Boa. You're a shameless person who betrays your master and ancestors. This slap is a lesson I'm teaching you on behalf of Senior Boyong. Mu Yu's voice was very cold. He looked at Boyong Daoren, who was being stepped on by Zhu Wenxing, and felt a burst of anger. He hated people who betrayed their master and ancestors and forgot their roots. Bastard, you're asking for death. Reverend Boa was shocked and angry at the same time. Just as she was about to move forward on her sword, 5 auras that were no weaker than her own rose to the sky and forced her to stop. She froze on the spot as if she was struck by lightning. Anshu, Qingyan, Xiangnan, Lan Ling and Mu Yu. The auras of the 5 Jindan period cultivators surrounded them. The majestic aura was even stronger than that of the 33 Jindan period cultivators. It shocked everyone present for a moment. None of them expected that there would be 5 Jindan period cultivators in a sect that had always been looked down upon. Not to mention that 4 of them were so young. You didn't bring enough people today. And Shu's eyes were like torches. His aura was the strongest, like the sun in the sky, making everyone's heart palpitate. They had only seen this kind of aura on 2 people before. They were the Green Pine Taoist and the Zhuhua Immortal, who had once ruled the world with their hands and kept their word. Chapter 101. Golden Core 9th Firmament. And Shu was actually at the Golden Core 9th Firmament. The other Jindan period cultivators were all shocked. Although the Jindan period cultivators appeared to be awe-inspiring, in reality, only Taoist 7 Birds, who was at the Golden Core 5th Firmament, was the strongest. Usually, when they faced Taoist 7 Birds in Zhuhua school, they didn't dare to overstep their bounds. It was obvious how great the difference in strength was between the Jindan period and the Golden Core 9th Firmament. Perfected Zhuhua, who was once at the Golden Core 9th Firmament, was already worthy of their admiration, not to mention the Qingsong Taoist, who was also at the Golden Core 9th Firmament and slightly stronger. The Qingsong Taoist and Perfected Zhuhua were both at the Golden Core 9th Firmament and looked down on the entire cultivation world. Apart from them, no one else had ever reached the Golden Core 9th Firmament. However, they never imagined that the Falling Dust sect, which was usually ridiculed by others, actually had a Golden Core 9th Firmament cultivator. How was this possible? Feng Haochen usually went out with the cultivation of an ordinary Jindan period cultivator, so no one took him seriously. But how did his sect have someone who could look down on the former Qingsong Taoist and Perfected Zhuhua? How can you be at the Golden Core 9th Firmament? Zhu Wenxing took a step back in shock. As Perfected Zhuhua's favorite disciple, he naturally knew the aura of a Golden Core 9th Firmament cultivator. There was no way he would be mistaken about this. He had followed Perfected Zhuhua for so many years and had always been intimidated by this aura. When Anshu revealed his cultivation, he immediately knew who he had offended. He vaguely understood why his master had sent him to take over the Falling Dust sect. Anshu stood there alone with a cold expression. He had never shown any emotion on his face before. If he did, it would only soften in front of Feng Haochen. Therefore, when he took a step forward with a murderous look on his face, all the disciples of the Falling Dust sect knew that Anshu was serious. Mu Yu had never sensed Anshu's true cultivation level. Usually, Anshu's aura would never be so overbearing. According to Mu Yu's estimation, his master was only at the 5th or 6th heavenly layer of Jindan realm, and Anshu's aura was usually not higher than his master's. Mu Yu also thought that Anshu's cultivation was only at the 5th or 6th heavenly layer. No wonder. So Master already knew that the falling dust sect wasn't simple. Bai Liang was also shocked. So this was what his master meant when he told him not to get into a conflict with the falling dust sect. Now that both the Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua had entered the nascent soul stage, and neither sect had a ninth heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator. If Enshu could submit, it would be a great help to any sect. It would be equivalent to the Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua of the past. Everyone was stunned by Enshu's ninth heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivation. Enshu wasn't the only one who was stunned. The 4 young disciples of the Falling Dust sect were also stunned. They had reached the Jindan realm at such a young age. With such talent, if they were given another 10 years to cultivate, wouldn't it only be a matter of time before they surpassed the Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua? Do you want to fight or get lost? Enshu's voice wasn't loud, but it sounded like thunder in everyone's ears. Fight? Even if they joined forces, they wouldn't be able to defeat Enshu. The Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua were once revered for a reason, not to mention the 4 Jindan period disciples. Everyone revealed a strange expression as they looked at Zhu Wenxing, waiting for him to make a decision. Humph. I've really underestimated your falling dust sect. If it were in the past, I might have been a little afraid. But now that my master has reached the nascent soul stage, so what if you have the strength of a ninth heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator? Zhu Wenxing harumphed coldly. He knew he'd kicked an iron plate today. Perhaps perfected Jiuhua would have to personally take over the falling dust sect. Then let your master come personally. As for you, you're not worthy of making a fuss here. Enshu's voice was always so cold, but it sounded so lofty and unapproachable in everyone's ears. You! Zhu Wenxing's eyes flickered. Daoist 7 Birds sneered. I've been in the cultivation world for so many years, but I've never heard of anyone with the strength of a ninth heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator. If you were really so powerful, you would have become a formidable figure in the cultivation world long ago. But you're willing to hide in the falling dust sect. You must have some hidden reason, right? Or perhaps you're just bluffing. I'd like to personally experience your strength. Everyone nodded slightly at his words. Why would a ninth heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator be so willing to stay in a rundown sect? In the past, he should have been on equal footing with the Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua, but he'd always been in seclusion. There must have been some hidden reason. Perhaps his imposing manner was just for show. He didn't dare to challenge the Qingsong Taoist and perfected Jiuhua. Enshu, I'll take him on, said Qingyan. He wasn't surprised to see Enshu's strength. He'd long since known Enshu's true level of cultivation. Mu you go, said Enshu unexpectedly. Eh? Why me? Mu Yu's eyes widened. He was only a first heavenly layer Jindan realm rookie. How could he beat Daoist 7 Birds, a 5th heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator? He'd originally wanted to see Enshu or Qingyan's true strength, but he hadn't expected Enshu to push him forward. I still don't know your exact situation after you returned to the mountain. The falling dust swordplay is unparalleled in the world. If you can't even beat a puny 5th heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator, I'll personally cook every meal for you to nourish your body. Enshu looked at Mu Yu meaningfully. Holy shit! Nourish my body? Mu Yu shivered. This threat was really fatal. Mu Yu and the others didn't know that the 9 forms of the falling dust swordplay was originally known as the 9 heavenly sword guides. Their master, Feng Haochen, also known as Sword Shadow Chen Feng, had become famous in the cultivation world because of this swordplay. In a remote place like the Moyun mountain range, a 5th heavenly layer Jindan realm cultivator wasn't even worth mentioning in Enshu's eyes. Mu Yu, come on. Pluck out that bald guy's eyebrows and Enshu won't have to nourish your body. Pluck out a few strands of his sloppy beard. Be a true bald guy. Kong Kong and Meow Meow were sitting on the rock again. This time, they were peeling bananas and cheering as if no one was around. It turned out that they weren't afraid of running away just now. They'd run out of fruits and melon seeds and were going back to replenish their supplies. Hey, stinky old man. I and Shu don't need to do anything to deal with you. I'm the weakest here. Talk if you can beat me. Mu Yu's feet moved lightly as he became spirited. He had never fought with anyone from the Jindan period. Compared to Enshu's threat, he was more willing to face Taoist Seven Birds, who was at the 5th heavenly layer Jindan realm. Enshu's so-called nourishment was no joke. Taoist Seven Birds' face turned ashen when he heard the two troublemakers' words. When he saw that it was only Mu Yu walking out, he was instantly enraged. He was actually being mocked by a few brats. Ignorant brat, do you really think that you can be so arrogant in the Jindan period? If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. A large black fan appeared in Taoist Seven Birds' hand. There were 7 birds drawn on it. This fan was called the Seven Birds fan. It was the magic treasure that made Taoist Seven Birds famous. A fan could fly 7 birds, named Phoenix, Roc, Blue Luan, Peacock, White Crane, Swan, and Owl. Taoist Seven Birds cultivation technique wasn't taught by the Jiuhua school. He was an elder under perfected Jiuhua's command. In his early years, he had made a name for himself in the cultivation world with the 7 Birds fan. White Crane spreads its wings. Taoist Seven Birds waved the fan in his hand. Suddenly, a gust of wind rose from all directions, and the surrounding spiritual energy madly rushed towards his fan. A white crane shadow flew out from the fan, and a series of sharp cries rang out as it swiftly attacked Mu Yu. Why is this name so tacky? Mu Yu muttered as he struck out with his shadow clone sword. Green light shone brightly as sword chi swept out. His entire body met the illusory crane shadow head-on. Ding! The crane shadow was shattered by Mu Yu's shadow clone sword. However, the crane shadows drilled out of the fragments, transforming into thousands of tiny white cranes. They rushed forward and enveloped Mu Yu. Then, the thousands of crane shadows flapped their wings in unison. Countless wind blades flashed out from the thousands of crane shadows, attempting to crush Mu Yu from all directions. Falling shadow vanishing. The 8th move of the Dustfall sword art, falling shadow vanishing. 10,000 shadows converged into one, leaving no shadow behind. Facing Taoist Seven Birds, who was at the 5th firmament of the Golden Core realm, Mu Yu didn't dare to be careless. Suddenly, 4 shadow swords appeared in his hand. Each of the shadow swords soared into the sky. Tens of thousands of shadow swords spread out with Mu Yu as the center. Like a gust of wind, all of the shadow swords were blown away. However, Taoist Seven Birds waved his fan again, and a shadow enveloped Mu Yu's head. Mu Yu felt a wave of pressure on his body, as though a cauldron had smashed down on him. He tapped his foot on the ground and quickly moved away. However, the shadow of a wing still swept his shoulder and sent him flying. Great rock spreading wings. Die, kid! Taoist Seven Birds roared. The shadow that blotted out the sky was actually a great rock. It was 100 meters long and nearly surrounded the empty space halfway up the mountain. Such a huge wing shadow caused everyone to retreat, afraid that they would be affected by the terrifying wing shadow. Great rock spreading wings. Is the phoenix dancing in the 9 heavens next? Can't you be a little more creative? Mu Yu retreated more than 30 meters in the air before forcibly coming to a stop. His shoulder was burning with pain, as though it was about to break. His spiritual energy surged, stabilizing his injury in time. However, Taoist Seven Birds didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. The great rock charged at Mu Yu again, stirring up strong winds and sending sand and stones flying. In the blink of an eye, it arrived in front of Mu Yu. Mu Yu continued to retreat. The tips of the flying swords in his hand were pressed against each other. Waves of energy were transmitted from the tip of the swords into each sword. The shadow swords couldn't stop trembling. The surrounding spiritual energy also began to become chaotic. The second style of the Dustfall swordplay, Dustfall. Gathering chi to break spirit, chi to dust. A green light shot up from the tip of the sword, piercing through the great rock's welcome and creating a huge hole in its wing. Muyu flew up through the hole in the wing. Meanwhile, the great rock lost control and fell heavily to the ground, disappearing without a trace. Dust flew everywhere as a deafening boom shook the heavens. Muyu's gaze sharpened. He instantly closed the distance between him and Taoist Seven Bird. The green sword chi pierced straight for Taoist Seven Bird's heart. Taoist Seven Birds blocked in front of his chest with his black fan. Mu Yu's shadow swords collided with it, causing a series of explosions. Both Taoist Seven Birds and Mu Yu retreated. How is this old guy so powerful? Mu Yu rubbed his shoulder that had been swept by the great rock. The numbness gradually disappeared. A person in the fifth firmament of the Golden Core realm really couldn't be underestimated. And Shu had asked Mu Yu to fight against someone in this realm. It was still a bit difficult for him, and Mu Yu had suffered a bit. While Mu Yu was complaining about Shu, Taoist Seven Birds was greatly shocked. This young man was only in the first firmament of the Golden Core realm, but he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. Wouldn't it be a matter of time before he couldn't even defeat him? If this kind of person couldn't be subdued, then he would destroy him. Taoist Seven Birds had a fierce look on his face. He had already raised the Seven Birds fan in his hand. Everyone present was in the Jindan period. Apart from the two from Qingsong School, everyone else was in awe of him. If he couldn't take down this young man, then he would become a huge joke if word got out. Mu Yu, it seems like you need Shu to nourish your body. Yes. You can defeat this baldy with a big nourishment. The two troublemakers, Kong Kong and Miao Miao, threw away their banana peels and shouted as if they wanted to see the world in chaos. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.